Out in the purple world, video dreams mean something. We're in the purple world. We don't need nothing. We're in the purple world. We're in the purple world. We're in the purple world. We don't need nothing. We're from a certain time. I'm from another life. I'm trading over time for a brighter light. We're from a certain time. I won't do. I'm from another life. I won't do. I'm trading over time already for a brighter light. Let's stand out in the purple world. Out in the purple world. We're from the purple world. We don't need nothing. We're full of nothing. Say something. We have a certain drive. I'm not just killing time. I open every door for a look inside. We have a certain drive. I won't do. I'm not just killing time. I won't do. I open every door. I already have for a look inside. We understand. Out in the purple world. Out in the purple world. We're from the purple world. We don't need nothing. When will you notice? Did you figure it out? Did you forget and let it slip away again? All over. Feel there's nothing to say. On the edge of sleep, still awake, still out in the purple world. Video dreams mean something. We're in the purple world. We don't need nothing. We're in the purple world. We're in the purple world. We're in the purple world. We don't need nothing. We're in the purple world. We're in the purple world. We're in the purple world. We don't need nothing.
Hey everybody, welcome to Rant tonight with my buddy Keith Gladysz. Gladysz, right?
Gladysz, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why. It's just that extra Z that threw me off for a second.
I know it's a silent Z.
But you guys can also call this guy Diet Kong, or dare I say Flaccid
get
Dick?
that.
Or maybe
Yeah,
you don't want to
him too.
identify as Flaccid.
I think the whole point was identifying him. So I got to roll with it. I got to accept it.
So good, so good. But right on, let's just back up a second and For anybody who hasn't been around since 2019 on my channel, you might not have caught the first time I talked to Keith, where we got into a very deep story of how Lyme disease changed his life, and he found the tools for balancing his mind and body through Eastern practices, herbalism and Qigong, and meditation, of course. We're not here to rehash that story, but what's amazing to me is to see that 2 years down the road, our boy Keith is totally crushing, making music, clowning the crown. Seems clearer and shinier than ever. I listened to our previous episode earlier today, and it was really something special. I think people would get a lot out of it. So anyway, how you feeling, man?
I'm feeling good. You know, that's the last time we spoke 2 years ago, and it was for me to even be able to do the podcast at that point was a positive step, you know, to be healthy enough. So I was just reflecting on it before I was doing this with you today, and I was like, oh, I don't even think about Lyme anymore. So I've come that far with it that I'm happy to say it's not even really in my mind anymore. So cheers to that.
Right. And I actually remember from that conversation at one point you said, you know, this is something I'll live with forever. But look at you now, not thinking about it. It's basically like you're not living with it.
Yeah, you know, will probably be there in a sense, but yes, that is true. Yeah. So it's a crazy improvement. So I'm super happy about that. And I feel, totally blessed. So.
Well, I'm going to stop into the chatters and say hi to everybody. Stella Moon, Sunseed, Illuminate Me, Slick Dissident, Jim from Weaving Spiders. And that's just over in YouTube. And who else we got? Kelsey, Kat, Corinne, Gordy over on Rockfin. There's actually more people watching on Rockfin than anywhere else, which I think is pretty cool. I appreciate that support since they're the only one of the 4 locations we're streaming to right now that lets me monetize. Too much thought crime everywhere else, I guess. But hey, man, how's your clown world been since we talked last? I mean,
my clown world. I live in it. That's what I live in. Yeah, I'm either serious or not at all. There's not much in between. Yeah, it's funny. Well, you know, it was cool that you played that video. You opened with that, the Purple World one, because at that point I was like, I want a wig or something because I've been bald forever. And I was like, I want a different visual. So that was the beginning of the character that became Flaccid Dick. I just started wearing that just for the appearance, but then I began to notice that I hated this guy I was making. Not in that video. That was pretty much my normal persona that I put on for the world. But as I did it more and I started creating this Flaccid Dick character, I realized it was really like looking at my shadow, like my hidden self. So I decided to pull it out and look at it. And it was really like being the fool, playing the fool, and just being willing to say, oh, I really am an asshole. So to look at myself as objectively as I could and just sort of say, yeah, let's name it. And let's identify that. And throughout the pandemic, I put out a whole bunch of EPs, super short ones. Like they're all 3 songs, 1 minute each. And I put one out every other month. So there were 7 of them over a 12-month period. So I was playing with this character, and he's just like, you know, you're calling it Slay the Dragon and Clown the Crown. Those are the first 2 Flaccid Dick ones where there was a shift in the persona. I was like, oh, I don't like that person that I'm looking at right now as I watch it back. It made me super uncomfortable to do it. So I was like, okay, there's something there then, because it's not me trying to be whatever way I'm intentionally trying to present myself. I like, sort of the opposite, that I gave room to the peripheral part that I could only kind of catch out of the corner of my eye, to be able to put the lens on that and show them of what I'm, an aspect of me that I try to not associate with.
That's what I was thinking when I was going through the stuff that you put out on Instagram, those 1 minute things. We're going to play some of that stuff, maybe a lot of it, because it's fun. Rachel says,
yeah, if you want to,
maybe
Black Swan. Play something so there's some context for people.
Yeah, I will. I'll get that screen share going. What I thought about it though when I saw it, Flaccid Dick. That's ballsy. Good one, Jim.
I know it's Yeah. The whole thing is a little bit wrong. It makes me not feel right about it myself, like I'm saying. So I'm like, yeah, it's got to be.
It's amazing. Like, it's the exact opposite of how most people will present art. And it's like a statement on the persona itself. You're like, instead of
Or
making a
the
character
points.
that's
Yeah.
larger than life and like so cool that you want everyone to think that you're actually like that and not just a normal human being, it's the opposite. It's like, this is the thing that the persona that
Right.
nobody gets to see for most human beings, like this character. So there's something very interesting and special
even for
about it.
myself to reveal it, it's not. Oh, cool. Thanks. It was revealing itself to me at the same time. Like, it wasn't a totally conscious, I could say it that way. There's a linearity to it, but I wasn't experiencing that way. I was laughing with my friends and just somehow, oh, I remember how we came up with the name. We were like, yeah, we should throw Flaccid Dick parties. Just my friend said that, just being stupid, saying whatever. I don't even know what context that had. And I was like, oh no, I should be Flaccid Dick, and it should be Flaccid Dick parties. So then I was like, oh, that just is so wrong. Like, that name with the visual was so right and wrong. It had to be. So,
well, I'll play a couple right now: the Slay the Dragon and Clown the Crown, since that is the titles of this one.
yeah, there you go. Cool.
Let me turn on the screen share. Yeah, so this is Slay the Dragon. It's a minute-long video, and it should be audible. I can't promise the. Actually, check real quick. Yeah, it should be the same volume as everything else. Maybe. I don't know. Production's hard, but here we go.
All day, 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 all day. Into the nighttime too. Yeah, slay the dragon. All day, all day, all day, all day, the dragon. Yeah, I'll put it right here. Slay.
To-do list.
What's that?
Yeah, so that is pretty intense, but it still has this musical aspect to it that is catchy and interesting. I mean, what I like about it, I guess, is the concept of Slay the Dragon. That's different for everybody, but when we look at the world esoterically, there seems to be something much more significant about that idea with life. Anyway, so let's talk about it. Toth Mark wants to know, what the fuck am I watching? Help us understand.
Good question. Well, the whole project is framed that way, with 7 and 12 and 3 and 1, and I made it sort of esoterically themed that way. So, but for me, Slay the Dragon was confronting the self. You know, that is essentially what it means for me. So it's, in the Middle Ages, it was, literally slaying the dragon, with the knights going up and rescuing the soul, the virgin that's sacrificed to the monster, right? So it's sort of the bookend of it is the last post that I made on Instagram, where I do the remix of Purple World, and I'm doing a Goliath thing with a slingshot, and that's the same sort of metaphor. I think it's the same meaning, like the labyrinth as well. So,
there's a lot of layers to
nature.
this. There's like this persona, first of all, then there's the dragon and the virgin idea. Well, Clown World is definitely taking us more and more into like the sacrifice of the virgin or the inner child in everybody, where it wouldn't matter how silly somebody was, there would be no like judgment of better or worse, if you're just yourself. So that, and of course, what happens to kids, you understand, because you've been homeschooling your kids even before cooties. So It's a whole nother aspect of it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, what do you want to move into that a little bit about the homeschooling stuff?
Yeah, I mean, if that's something you want to share about, it's basically
Sure.
your platform to talk about your life however you want, represent yourself.
Yeah.
Flaccid Dick or Keith Gladysz
It's gonna be all of them.
or
It's all the
Diet
same
Kong.
thing. Or Diet Kong, and
It
it's
is a
that as
departure
well.
though, because Diet Kong has a very slick and like cool aspect to him. You know, he got the suit in the one video. The music
And the
is
production
really,
too, and it's all
really slick production with Diet Kong, like extremely high end professional mastering and mixing,
And
everything
that's with
about it.
my buddy Fred FS. And so that's what was cool about doing Flaccid Dick. Was the first thing I did entirely on my own. So I did all aspects myself. I didn't work with Fred on that one. So normally that's his production on all the earlier previous Diet Kong stuff. So yeah, he's great.
Kelsey
so it was cool
in
to do
Rockfin
something that's
chat
more
said
brash
her
because
alter
of that.
ego. I'm sorry, real quick. A commenter on Rockfin said, Kelsey said, my alter ego inappropriate go-to name is Minstrel Milkshake. So there you go. You're not the only one with this kind of shadow.
Same team. Right, I know.
Partners in crime.
It's funny to want to do that. I mean, because I do enjoy it, but it is embarrassing too. Like that Slay the Dragon was the first thing I did, like I said, as that guy, and I hesitated with it because I was like, "What? What is that?" You know. And then, of course, that became the interesting part to look at. Like, well, let's see, we're making it up. So you have the other one too, the Clown the Crown.
Yeah, and I have quite a few from your Instagram, but that is kind of putting us in a chronological order to do those two first. And then what'll be fun is to see how the artwork has changed as the character has taken on even more personality, so to speak. Because I think that that's definitely been the case. It's like some of the later Flaccid Dick stuff, Flaccid Dick stuff is like it retains like some of the outlandish quality. I mean, a lot of it you can't take it away, but the things blend more and are cohesive in another sense.
Yeah.
Like, so that's
And
your
also
skill
I'm
level with the
blending-
medium changing too, which is cool to watch.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, like I started doing stuff with that's sort of comedy where I'm doing spoken things over music that I'm making, and I began to wonder what I was even doing, which is good. I think to find that place, like, what is it? What am I doing?
Because you actually talked about that as part of your style in the first time we spoke on InnerVerse.
I did.
You were talking about doing collage art, and that was like all you could do because it was during the hard part of your illness. And so you had to just you said, I just told myself I'm not making art. It's just the process. It's not a thing I'm making. And it's like it's very meta back to the concept of a persona and characters.
Yeah.
Because we're constantly playing a character.
So it's been not interfering, but yeah, it's been exposed in my life from playing Flaccid Dick and moving in that direction anyway in my awareness or trying to be aware that I'm deconstructing this part of me now that I'm presenting. And that's when it gets really confusing because, that you start tinkering with that and it's necessary, but that's what it's about. So it's super it was great to play this character for that reason. One that is like you said it well, like it's not presenting the stepping in all cool. It's the opposite of that. And even the slicker Diet Kong stuff, like the white suit, I always felt was uncool too in a way. Yeah, white in rock and roll is kind of strange, I think. I mean, it's been done for sure. It's not like a new concept, but black is the go-to, it seems, or something that's a little bit there's not a lot of edge to white. I think that's what it is.
And then white is supposedly all the colors or reflecting every color.
Right.
So that also comes across in a weird like inversion of that idea with how colorful and like everything in the kitchen sink with Flaccid.
And inclusive in that sense of being representing everything that way. Yeah, for sure.
So I'm going to put up the clown the crown, or crown the clown. I just love that. I also have to
It's
say,
both. It's crown the clown, clown the crown.
well, that just okay. I'll just gather my thoughts before we watch this, because just
Okay,
that
all right.
phrase is deep. Yeah, so I can tell by watching that you know things about the crown, about about the royal families. There's
Well,
there's a message here. Can we talk about it?
Sure. Yes. I don't. I wasn't being specific about the British crown necessarily, but
Sure, just the concept.
just the whole concept. Yeah, for sure.
Well, I just want to say,
Yeah,
I think
and
it's
the use
brilliant,
of
the
go
wordplay
ahead.
that's in there too.
Well, that's
L
what I
to
was just bringing up, and
L
how
to
that.
R shift. So many languages
What's
that's
that?
L's and R's get mixed up, right?
Mhm. Yeah, and that's in there. So the condemnation of the monarchy or whatever I'm saying in there is related to the words that are used to control us. That's what it's really at the heart of it is saying. And what I like about putting it in
Lure
the
and
clown
lure.
context for the whole thing, lore and lore, yeah. So it's I'm fast. I love that. I know, like you too, like that. Just being able to look at
Word magic,
when I read
basically.
something, it's the in between or the unsaid thing in it. Yeah, word magic, and yes. So that's you said it. So
And
that's pretty
that's
much what that's about. But what I really like, what's that?
Oh, no problem. I'll try to be careful. We have a slight delay with each other, and that's probably because you're off in the homestead, not in the city.
Yeah, I'm sure that's on my end. It's definitely my end, I'm sure.
Yeah, okay, so I'll go then. I'll talk about that. Like lore and lure. I think that is so clutch. How much of
Mhm.
studying the occult, which is just what's hidden in the world, is sidelined, or people get waylaid by lore, lured into lore, and spend their time going
Yeah.
down a million different cul-de-sacs before the gold mine to find out that, oh, what is the
Yep.
crown? It's actually something inside of you, in the sense that if you become
Right.
sovereign of your own energy, then you'll have no external rulers. It just won't be. But
Right.
that's the last thing you'll
Yep.
actually find in the lore ever told to you straight up. You're lured into the lore. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, that's interesting because I usually in Buddhism it's kind of talked about the other way where it's like you need an ego to desire to become desireless. So it's the sort of the inverse there, right? Like and in this way it's saying, yeah, you're being hooked into something that unfolds into something else. But that's what experience is. I mean, that would be my experience with any spiritual or religious practice. You think it's going to be one thing, and the thing that is compelling you, driving it towards completing this task, is ultimately going to kill that part of you. It's going to sacrifice that part of you. So it's a strange, I know, so that's on the personal level, but I know you're talking about more on how people are hooked in. Is that what you mean by
Well, no, I'm kind of talking about the same thing, but definitely Corinne makes a good point over in the Rockfin chat. They get people get lured into being waylaid, sex cults. Since I was talking about the occult, yeah, I mean that's definitely a part of a lot of artist paths in the main, if they go for the mainstream type of persona that can be have the crown in terms of the fame, which is what that part of you that you would need to transform to actually find freedom would be seeking in the first place for a lot of people. And there's a lot of talk already in the chat about the fool and the jester, and I'm sure that there's a lot of inspiration for Flaccid Dick as a character with those 100%. Concepts.
Yep. And then also Priapus, the Roman god with an erection, he always cracked me up. And he could never be satisfied. He was sort of a fool pan character. But yeah, the primary one is the fool. And what I realized about that, I was like, why is the fool so close to the king? You know, what is that relationship? Why is it? And the answer that I came up with was, well, it's not even that I came up with. I read it somewhere. Until you are able to be the fool and become unconventional in the sense of not even intentionally, but you know, when you're the fool, you really are. I'm an idiot. Like like I could present it in a certain way, and it is fun and it's cool. But then there's the same side to that persona that is really dumb and dangerous. So
yeah, I get it. And that's kind of like a loss of identity too. I've heard, I don't know if this is really an actual etymological definition, but I've heard that an idiot is one that doesn't know themselves, right? Or they don't know what is self-evident, because that's kind of saying the same thing. You know, you can't measure what's in front of you accurately, and that would be metaphorical to not being aware of reality, which is self in a pure and undiluted sense, the pre-identity self.
Right. Well, all of this came up for me, and this had to do with the cooties, as you say. What does it mean to be an artist? What does it mean to be an artist, you know, in relation to society? Because that's what ultimately creates the definition that we use and function with, right? Like, it's as much as I exist in my own space and want to just do it for myself, and I do, the culture itself has a definition of it that is, there's more to it than that, right? So I was wondering, let's say society falls apart, would I make art? You know, in this new context where that previous culture that how I even understand what art is, what would I be doing? And I showed you some of the talismans that I've been making and totems. And that for me was like, yeah, I would be doing that. That's something that, so then I started applying that to everything, to make art, music, anything in this culture is always going to, I mean, it's the old argument. It's nothing new, but I'm one of those people who feels that way, that it is about getting to the root of that self underneath the persona. That's the point of what art making even is. So we put that in an American context of making art, and it's immediately becoming something else because of the culture. The culture does that with everything. It's not particularly against art. It's just how it consumes and everything. So that, yeah.
I pulled some of these up on screen. I know we have at least one other sculpturist in the group here listening, Jim. He's probably sculpturing right now in his shop.
Cool. Nice. Yeah, those are totems that I made with my grandfather's lead fishing weights. So he died when I was 3, and I had toy soldier molds that I used to make with my dad, pouring, you know, lead soldiers. So my dad had saved my grandfather's lead weights, so I melted them down and mismatched the molds. And I saved that paint from when I was a kid too. It's like those little jars of model paint. And so I poured them into these abstract shapes to make, a literal totem. I really wanted to do something that wasn't just a metaphor, but using the materials that were actually from, connecting all three of us.
That's really cool. I mean, that's something that has a ton of meaning, but totally outside of the culture, like you said. It's within the culture of your actual orbit, your real lineage, the human beings that are connected to you. Really neat.
Yeah. And yeah. So it's about trying to radiate from within that way into the culture, when the culture is always trying to do what it is, be what it is, which is will easily swallow me.
I talk about this as a concept all the time. Frequent guest Michael Wan talks about that, living, and now I kind of have hijacked this way of describing it, but living an inner directed life instead of outer, like your inner world directing your outer world instead of the outer world directing your inner world.
Yeah.
That's the big shift that I think life is largely about in this collective reality, is learning how to do that.
I think of that as like, when you see a shock mount for a mic and it's just sitting in that cradle and it has that little bungee to it. I think of being yourself, your soul, whatever, is being that in the body. And then when I'm operating from that inner place, it's like even my body becomes awareness of myself. Did I say that the right way? The self becomes aware of my body. I think it works both ways.
I like how you put it in the first time we talked, where we were describing movement medicine like Qigong or Tai Chi, and how we never really learn to use our full body. Our full body is not just even, head to toe, but being connected and grounded to the earth, the cosmic and ethereal energy around us. It's all of that. So instead of, there's something that you can learn in Qigong. At least this is where I learned it. Probably other ways to learn it. Maybe maybe psilocybin is one way you can learn this. I've seen people that appear to have learned it that way. But instead of telling my arm with my brain, go and pick this up, and I'm sending these mental commands and signals, there's like a way of, with your whole body, feeling out to it and let it. It's hard to describe, but the way that I came across this was in movement synced with breathing, where I just intended for the movement to happen, but didn't make the movement happen. And all I did was focus on the breath in and out. And it's like whenever they teach you to make a chi ball. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Like as I do this,
amazing.
Exhale is what makes it shrink. I'm not sending a signal to my hands. And I've even experimented with a friend who does Qigong as well, where he put his hands in between mine, and we both did it both ways. And I put my hands outside of his, and we just synced our breathing. And I was the one moving my hands, but his hands came out and in with the breath too, even though he was literally just empty mind, not intending to do anything. And so like our energy fields were hooked up, and we were pushing this ball of actual energy that's invisible to the perceptual wavelength most people are in. And so that's part of what I'm talking about. But then that's just with my hands. So imagine that in a full embodied sense, that type of movement. And that's the best I can do to describe something that is really more of a feeling.
Sure, getting uncrinkled. That's one of the Flaccid Dick videos I have with the aluminum foil ball. And I'm all like, and I'm uncrinkling it and smoothing it out. Because that's the it's the only thing that's in the way, right? If all of that's right, if there's Buddha nature, if there's whatever, Christ, however you want to say, your soul, or that we're perfect underneath, the only thing that's the issue is the tension on top of that, which even results in meditation. When we could say that even breath is tension. Like it has to be so quiet and relaxed. Everything needs to be that way. And there's the big ball of me, tension.
Yeah, I'll play this. But there's some good comments here, and I haven't even been watching Rockfin. Sorry, everybody. But Thoth Mark says she legit helps with that. I actually just posted a 25% discount code to the Secret Energy Store on my Telegram channel for She Legit, which I use basically every day. I did forget today, but almost every day. And it's really full spectrum, superior mineral intake in terms of a supplement. And I know you're a man about supplements. you've done the gamut of supplementing, but I just had to throw that out there because Thoth Mark is right. She Legit helps with everything electrical. And that kind of, this is an electrical concept we're describing. But all right, I'll play this. Let's see. This is on Instagram, but I figured out how to make it big. And this is an example of one where it's just like, it's not even a music video. It's just the characters being.
Is the sound on? I don't know if the sound's on that one.
Oh, sorry. I didn't have it on. Good call.
Because you need to hear the grunting.
Yeah. Aluminum foil is weird.
It is weird. I used to always smooth them out after having a ring ding in elementary school. That was my. So there you go.
So that's that. Cool. We have so many options of things to play off of your channels. I should probably keep going. But unless you want to talk more about the crinkle, I mean, that's fun.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's pretty much it. It seems like that. Yeah, just as I'm hanging out, if I'm standing around, I just have my arms folded, I'll notice I'm like clenching. And there's this sense of holding and unease underneath it all. So
yeah,
that's what needs to be uncrinkled.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I think healers, energy healers are ever doing for a person is showing them where to uncrinkle, and they still have to do it.
Yeah.
You know, massage is finding areas of tension, and then your body notices, ooh, that's tense because it's being touched there. Because someone else is feeling it. You've been ignoring feeling it.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Jenny B says this explains the hair hanging in the background. Yep, that's the.
Those are the wigs.
Yeah.
Oh, they're over there. Yeah. That's it.
So how did you come across the wigs? What was the story there?
So I was looking for a new look, and I shaved my head. So I was like, maybe I'll get a wig or something to offset the way I've been looking the same, you know? So I was just looking on Amazon for different wigs, and then I saw these wigs for hair extension, which I thought was hilarious because I'm buying a wig to still be bald, which was still making me laugh. So I just got a couple of them. They have so many different colors too. I could get into them, but I only have 2 right now. And I did a lot with 2. But yeah, so once I saw that wasn't a thought or an intuition. That was really just, well, the thought was like, oh, it was more of a literal, like a rational thought. I want this for the live show or for some videos. Oh, when I happened upon that, I was like, well, that's perfect. So, and it goes with the flaccidness. It goes with that sense of, it's not incompetence of, what do you call that? When you can't become erect, I'm looking for the other metaphor of.
Oh, impotence.
Impotence.
Now,
yeah,
okay.
I guess
do you think that this
word.
comes? Do you think that this comes at the same time as like Cootie's clown world, synchronistically? I mean, it sounds like this just sort of naturally emerged, but do you see this as almost a natural response to the energy of what the madness of the external world right now?
I do. Yeah, because then it started to manifest where I grew my hair out in the back. It was down in my shoulders. I just recently shaved it. In the last video, the most recent video, you could see the way it was. So I was actually growing, and I shaved my beard. I didn't have a beard either. So I was like, I need to look like something else during the virus. Although it was January when I started growing my hair that way. And that's like right when we started hearing about coronavirus. So that was synchronicitous as well. And then my
just
friend,
that
my friend
it's
was
like
like,
a crown.
"You're
I mean,
turning
it is
into
kind
him
of
now,
like
dude. You're right."
it's like a
I know,
crown
right?
the way you
Crown,
wore it.
all of that.
So weird.
Yeah, yeah. So then my friend had to point out to me, he's like, "Yo, you're becoming that guy. Like you're growing your hair. Like you don't need the wig anymore." I was like, "Well, you're kind of right there."
Did that scare you?
So it was an interesting time. Yeah, I probably scared my wife too. But it was an interesting time to be able to do that, to be like, as my Rona haircut, you know. Um,
A lot of
but
people
then
stop
after a
getting
while, I
haircuts
needed to
around
let
then.
that go too. Yeah, yeah. My wife did the opposite. She shaved her head, so it's just been growing out. So she went the other way. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. It's sort of like you know, when you dream something and then when you wake up, you realize there was some trigger that happened to you that caused in a split second this whole thing to happen, this whole understanding, right? Um,
Epiphanies, yeah.
I don't know. Epiphanies, I don't know what I was just going to connect that to. The hermit. This is Joshua Tree if it was in the water, but I certainly feel like a hermit out here.
Are you good to play this now, or do you want to finish a thought?
No, you could play it. That's cool.
All right.
Go, born all alone. Oh, it's cold. No heaven. Big desire. Make a fire. Warm enough to keep warm. Hermit turn away. So much less to say. Only human escape. Better find a way. Better find a way.
I really like something about that one. I can't tell you what.
Yeah.
I mean, I
like
could
that
tell
too.
you some things I like about it, but okay. So let me ask: was that like a plug cord that had a splitter leading
Yeah.
2 charges into 1 charge?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, that
Hermetic,
became
indeed.
Mhm. Yes. Yeah, so like underneath all the visual craziness, to me, is the most unified idea I've had throughout a project, I would say, because it has all those elements, and it's not flagrant, really. It's there if you want it to be. I mean, what's flagrant is just the overall aesthetic is, you know, pretty bonkers. So, and I like that idea of doing something clownish and just so psychedelic that you could just take it at that face value and just be like, what? But then there's other layers in there if you care to, you know. So
There's a lot of layers in it for being just like almost a video collage, the way that things come on and off of it, one step at a time. And one thing that people are pointing out is the voice, and really Flaccid Dick, as interesting and wild as he is just a facet of you musically that's rather recent. And I should go ahead and
yeah,
in the chats put the Spotify link to Diet Kong, because you've got a lot of other music that is, I won't say like, maybe it's more pop-ish in some aspects. It's got more cohesiveness. It's more of what you might go to
Yeah.
for an album, whereas Flaccid Dick is this whole other multimedia persona character that's beyond just music at this point. Very interesting.
Yeah, and Diet Kong is multimedia, but you're right. Like it was playing
it
it
is.
as a band would play, you know, like it was functioning as a band. What I liked about what Flaccid Dick is doing, it's moving into, because it's so multidimensional. I mean, you could be a multidimensional band, but I like this idea of thinking beyond those terms now. That's what is exciting to me.
Gordy in the chat says that that's a yod shape. There's been a lot of talk of the yod, the hand,
Yeah.
the 10
Mhm.
in the chats lately on our Telegram. But yeah, I've got a few more. Let me see what else I can pull up.
You know which one? There's one where it's I'm facing myself and it's sort of cartoony looking, and that just shows where I think that's where I'm having a conversation with myself.
Let me pull it up on screen, and you can
Oh,
just
yeah.
point out to me the one you're looking for.
Let's see.
And we're over on his Instagram right now, which is This Is Diet Kong. Is it earlier, possibly?
It might be, but I'm still looking. I got you if you want to keep scrolling.
Okay. There's a lot here.
Yeah, that was the oh yeah, so it's definitely down because you're back at the top.
We were about here before.
Okay, keep going down a little bit. Maybe I must have missed it. It must be a different thumbnail from what I'm thinking, because that's the very beginning with Slay the Dragon.
Yeah. Well, no problem.
Yeah, there's, yeah, oh, maybe it's that guy. You see me in the middle with the sunglasses to the left of that.
This one.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll pull this up.
That might be something. Oh, the volume's not on.
Oh, okay, I'll start us over. Yeah. Thanks for the heads up.
Yeah. I don't want to waste anyone's time.
And I kicked myself out of the stream.
That's what happened.
It happens. Yeah, I'm back. Okay, so, and I lost my spot on the Instagram page. So 1 second. Yeah, here we go. We're basically there. And I got to add the screen share back. Thanks everybody for your patience. Usually I'm so smooth with all this. Nobody knows the struggle.
Person. I mean, of course, everybody knows that.
I'm realer than real. Actually, actual. That much we know.
You think I'd waste my time with knuckleheads talking about simulations? Oh, this is real. I'm real. This is all really, really real, actually.
A's not B, dummy. Let's get down to brass tacks like boots on the ground strategy, touching terra firma. Get real!
I am that I am, and I am that I am that I am.
I am, right? Say I'm a real boy then. Say it. Honestly, I might not be fully complete.
Just yet.
But I'm trying. Keeping my head in the game.
Staying relaxed and patient. I'll get there. I don't lose. I just win.
You wanna win with me? We'll call it a tie.
So I was thinking of a different one, but that's fine. You get the gist of it. Where I'm starting to do some stuff like that. That you like. It isn't about the music. It's just talking some shit out.
Yeah, I've noticed that was a trend in some of them. It was like different, even like sub personalities of Flaccid Dick competing with each other.
That's the conversation that's happening. So the way I was able to let go of Lyme, and it's not going to be on my mind soon, I'm not going to need to make videos of myself where I put 7 of me on there and I'm obsessed with myself. That's the dream, is to go through this and let that go too. The way that I thought of Flaccid Dick too, of incorporating it in live, is like almost like the way Parliament would do that, where they would have characters come out and do a little bit and then just do their thing to bring in another flavor. So I haven't played yet again since the pandemic, so we'll see what happens with that.
I like artists that have the multiple
personalities.
So during I know a few of you at least on stage have multiple personalities. I should say.
You're talking to me, right? Yes.
You're one of them. I mean, I actually know multiple.
I know, and it's really artists. For me, like, for sure, multiple personality.
Yeah,
that's the way I try to guide. I'm like, who's in charge today? Literally, like knowing what person is in control of me today, or what aspect, so that I know where I'm at, because I've been able to, like, wait, that's an important thing.
Right.
Because I can make the mistake of thinking I'm one person already. I haven't gotten there yet. I'm not human yet. That'd be great. I think that's the potential and that's the dream. That's what we're here to do.
Yeah.
So to
It's
just
like the
assume that I'm the same
conversation with
person
the,
daily is like, that's not what's happening.
it's you're getting in touch maybe with the inner archetypes, the inner zodiac, which is inner led world instead of
Yeah.
outer directed life, which is, I guess, the path towards being what, like you said, an actual human being.
And then what I
Singular.
hope for is, after so much focus on the inward, that dissolves into just being, where that obsession
The
of
borderline
unraveling myself
is
just
gone.
my fucking obsession. Right, the borderline is gone. Right.
Yeah,
I
I'm
mean,
talking
that's
about that a
that's
lot
the
lately too. That we're, I think, getting to a point where we're going to stop seeing our bodies as being like suits for our souls or our spirits, and recognize that matter is spirit and spirit is material, and it's just
Yeah.
one thing. That will be
It's
really
one
handy
thing.
when
So-
people get there, because if that's been the divide that is,
Yeah.
I think, the original cut that all the clown crowns have used forever to control and delude.
Yeah.
They're like, look, we know that you're broken right in two, and also because of that, you're broken all these other ways. So listen, if you just
Yeah.
listen to us, we'll tell you more about how you're broken and why only we can fix it if you
And
give us
all
10%
sides
of
are
your
played
paycheck
that
every
way.
week.
Right, church or state or whatever it is. Yeah. I love how you're like, yeah, on Vibrant, it's like, it's more just fun. We don't really get serious or whatever.
Oh, we could get serious. I
This
mean,
is
do you
pretty
have any
serious talk. I'm
got
saying
any
this is
dad
pretty
jokes
serious
ready?
stuff.
Well, it's your
No.
art. Your art's bringing it out of me. It's
No,
too,
I love it, man. It's my headspace. This is where I'm at, like that's how so this is, I love talking about it. This is where my energy is. So although
I like to just ponder
recently,
it.
yeah,
What is
I've
it?
been in a place of not creating the last few months, and just to see what that would be like, because I'm so identified with that. That's what I do. That's who I am. So I wanted to see what it would be like to not do anything. And it's kind of cool, but also not. At some point, it's where to move from that position next, because the old framework of saying, oh, I have a band or I'm a singer and I make songs, and that's true, but there's a whole other thing there that is more interesting to me about it. And the more I can produce it myself, the more singular it becomes. It's like if you make a demo on your own and play all the instruments, good or bad, it's going to have a unified sound because you've done it all, right? So it's going to be something that's cohesive.
And then there's another flip of the coin, though, where if you're jamming with people that you're like, your bubbles are actually connected through care and through
It's the
trust.
best.
That, and in that sense,
Absolutely.
something comes through that brings a unified sound, as if it was all one individual playing each part.
Oh yeah,
So it's a trip.
absolutely. And I should start that way. All the music I've made up to Flaccid Dick, I've always played with other people. I've never made like a whole thing where I played the stuff. And although I had some people sit in on the Flaccid Dick stuff, so I didn't do everything on it. But that was sort of my venture to just be like, no, and it was foolproof to me. This is a kind of smart way, I think, of working. I was like, I'm going to make 1 minute songs. I'm not going to be intimidated to make a minute song. I could do those. That's not like making a 7-minute song, it's a lot easier. So I tried to find little ways, and then releasing every other month, to just make it a process that wasn't without me adding tension to it, without hindering it. And then I was like, you know what? I'll just produce it because it's Flaccid Dick. It should come out wrong. Especially at the beginning. Like I can't, like if something goes wrong, I'll be like, yeah, that's how that should be probably. So it made me feel comfortable, which is important. I realized I was like, oh, that's kind of cool that I found a way to express that. And
it's a Taoist feel, because it's going to trust the flow, and that the reality of what happened is what was correct, without the feel to need to control it. I'm not saying that it's right one way or the other, but it's a different type of creation whenever you do it that way, whenever you play the multiple choice test and just go with your first answer and never revise. That gives you something that's almost channeled. It's a little different than, I'm not saying one way is better than the other. Of course, you've got also great realism in a painter or somebody, and they go over the same spot and cover it up until it's exactly what they were envisioning. And that's another way of creating. And that's also totally legit. But Slick wants to know if your kids are also artistic.
Yes, they are. My 6-year-old daughter, she's funny. She's a painter. She loves painting, but she'll take her dolls and stuff, and then I'll come in the room and it'll be painted all red. She's like, "Here's my demon baby." I was like, "Oh, okay, right on." But she likes to, she's definitely the painter. And then my son, who's 10, he's a storyteller. So he's been he draws all the time and just makes stories. So that's became part of our approach for homeschool, where for me, it's like, as long as they can think critically, read, do some math, the rest of it is, subjective. It's how do you learn to think and learn? So
I would answer that question with care.
With care, with great care.
Like what you care about, you'll learn easily and quickly, and you'll go out of your way to learn it. So you teach a kid the skills to communicate and to read and read multiple languages, as in numbers and words. Then you instill in them, like, you should allow to care about them, to love themselves will allow them to care about other things, to care about things in a passionate way. So really, it's just you teach them the communication and interpretation skills and how to love themselves. And then you don't really have to teach them anything else. You can be there to facilitate stuff that they're interested in, but they'll direct their own interests from there. As a non-parent, that's like what I would observe about human beings in general.
Well, if you're going to be a parent at some point, you'll be right on, because that sounds like you said that very well.
Okay.
And it's like, you're already prepared for it. That's well understood. Lao Tzu says, cultivation is a matter of subtraction, not addition. So as a parenting style, that's a lot of it. It's don't interfere as much as possible, which is really difficult because I was raised in America at the time I did by Catholic parents, and the whole, the way that they raised me is contrary to the way I'm raising my kids. And I am careful not to just be reactionary in raising them the way that I wanted to be raised myself, or that sort of thing. So we live in Joshua Tree in California. So it's an amazing program that the state funds, where we get funds for the year and we pick out all these courses, and you can do Taekwondo, you can do Waldorf education, you can mix and match whatever you want. And so I basically just said to the teacher in the beginning, hey, we're basically unschooling. We want to do as little as possible, just to make sure we're on the same page here. And it's been great. Like, we've just been doing Zoom meetings once a month, and they're about to go back in person to meet, so it's been tough on the kids, being isolated, because we live out, it's like 7 miles in the sand off a pavement. So it's, it was an amazing thing for the pandemic to go through that, because it was even more removing. So there's some darkness with that and depression with that, but it was more a reminder, you'll probably like this too, of just stepping outside and nothing has changed. There's no discernible difference except what got in my head. So
it's like the Bill Hicks joke where he's like, you turn on the news and they're just like war, death, murder, violence. And then you look out the window and it's crickets, birds
so
chirping,
that
sun shining,
and we don't, our neighbors, we don't have many of them, and it's quiet out here. So that didn't change at all throughout that. So that was a good reminder as all of this has been unfolding. So, fortunately my kids were being homeschooled before that anyway. So we were in a flow with it, which is cool. But it's great, man. We just drive around, since we're not native Californians, we're from New York. We still have a lot to learn. We've been living here 3 years now, but we'll just pick like a historical society in some town or some spot that's got a lake. Or the other thing I've been doing with them, this is cool because I'm like, deeply into my practices and mind frame of trying to undo the house of cards. That's me. That I don't need to so closely identify with. But since I was raised Catholic and I had such difficulty with that situation, I didn't raise my kids with religion, but so how do I approach this stuff with them? So the first thing is the most natural way, which is they see me doing stuff, maintaining a shrine, and they help out with that. And we say a little prayer together in the morning and at night and whatever, things like that. But the other thing I realized is there's a great website called the Labyrinth Locator, and it has labyrinths in any zip code all over the world. So I started taking them to just putting in different places, and that's what we'll go and do. And fortunately, a lot of Episcopalian and Anglican churches have labyrinths. It was connected to the Catholic tradition from way back, and so they have them just outside at churches. So we've been going all over the place, and I just take them to walk, and it's so cute. The first time we did it, I was like, well, what mantra should I give them? And was like, oh, from Star Wars, I'm one with the Force is with me. So they walked around. That's one of the ones they used. And now we use may all beings be happy as one of them. That's a Buddhist one. That's a good one. So, and to me, that's education. Like, that's school, like,
Labyrinth Locator, is that what the website was called?
Labyrinth Locator. It might be .org.
Will somebody
not
find
sure.
that and post it in the Telegram group just so I don't forget about it? Do me a favor.
Super cool.
Whoever does that,
And
thanks in advance.
And I don't know, I only found that site once I was already in California, but they are everywhere out here. It's probably California, but they are all over the country. So we'll take little road trips to towns and find them and do that, which is fun.
Yeah, that'd be a good place for a meetup. You got to get the Labyrinth, and then that's where we'll have the podcast group meetup.
There you go.
Well, you brought up
it's
the
cool
religion thing. I wanted to, here's one. I mean, you finished that thought, but I was going to play the Lupercalia video because I really liked it.
Oh, yes. For from Dogjoy. Yeah, my friend's band. That's cool. Yeah. They had me do this last, Valentine's Day for Lupercalia.
Okay, so I'll play that. Go. Sound?
I wish I was unlearned as a kid. I hear that. Me too.
Okay, the sound's
what
not
we're
coming
trying
through.
to
Fix that.
Look at that face. Look at Flaccid there.
That's a good pause point. The dogs. Okay, let me see if I can.
My
figure out
kids
what
saw
was
that and they
happening.
were like, they did not like that with the hammer to the puppy picture. They were not feeling that.
That's what I was actually going to ask, was one of the questions I had. What do your kids think about Flaccid? So after we play this, or maybe you can talk about that. But here we go.
Yeah.
I got the sound on.
Wanted somebody to love. My heart is a mess. It's a problem, I guess.
Yeah, that face is terrifying.
Yeah.
To the other side.
Jeez, intense one.
Yeah.
So you made the effects on this, is that right?
Yeah, I made the whole, what do you mean? I did the whole thing, yeah.
Sorry, it's too loud to hear you. I can't adjust the volume because it's Instagram. So we'll hold
That's
on.
okay. Oh, see, the dogs are fine.
Yeah. The dogs made it through fine.
Yeah, they're fine. I showed you in the end.
So you did all the effects on that, though.
Yes. Yeah. So I did all. Yeah, which is fun. Like the way that you were talking about as a Taoist approach, as I'm making stuff with this character, it's so small. Like I have a bin over here with all the dollar store stuff that I use for his outfits. and the wigs are over there. And then I pull this green screen across, and I have, you know, I'm in a small space here, but I can do a lot. Yeah, so it's been fun to use like very small, and I love lo-fi stupid things. I really like that. Maybe to balance the ideas too, or to, yeah, I guess it's pointing to just the it makes it sort of surreal in that sense, or hyper real, right? You know what's a good one? Friends. Do you see that one?
Is that on your YouTube?
It's on my, I think that is up. My YouTube isn't as current, so, but that one I think is up there.
Okay.
That's when I made a paper mache me Flaccid.
Okay, well, I think I could find that on Instagram then, based on that description. So give me a second.
Yeah, it's there's a couple of paper mache ones, but one of them's a video.
Let's scroll. I'll bring it up. Yep. Okay. Is it this guy?
Oh,
This-
there you go, with me hugging. Yep, that's that guy.
That guy.
Yep.
All right. Make it. Oh,
That's the
just
one,
a
unless that's a screenshot.
screen grab. Okay.
Let's see. Well, it's gonna be right around there then when I posted it. Yeah, the one with my legs up and I'm laying down. That's it.
Okay. Good.
Hey, it's Dick. Dick, Flaccid Dick. I know it's been so long. You want to come over? I would like that. I miss you.
I like how one of your feet is a
Oh, you
cartoon.
miss me too?
It got cut out, so I had
Come on.
I put a cartoon foot.
So I noticed a king and a jester there.
Yes. There you go. That's from one of my favorite movies when I was a kid, The Court Jester, with Danny Kaye, the comedian from the 50s. He was like, it's a still pretty funny movie. Yeah, so I kept finding all of these connections to that, and then him having the ukulele over his head, and they're connected. And so, yeah, it was cool to be able to layer the stuff. Once I started with Slay the Dragon and Crown the Clown, I found myself for the first time having like a groundwork for how to move forward with a narrative. I've done like conceptual albums where some songs connect to one another, but usually it's just I'm writing songs and putting them together, and they're from a certain time. So this became something that I was like, oh, well, there's a way to tell a story through this, you know?
I got a call in on our call in line from Gordy, and the length of it looks like it's maybe a question. So I'm going to play that.
All right.
And maybe it's a question. But here we go. Looks like about 6 people have posted the Labyrinth locator. Appreciate you guys. That's great.
Nice.
Keith, where do you think that the creative force comes from? Where do you think art comes from? Are you a channel of it, or are you the creator, or you both?
The good
Wow.
one, Gordy.
That
Going
is a
straight
good
for
one.
the jugular.
Yeah, thanks for that question. But yeah, it's I'm gonna tell you because I know. So let me start there. I have no idea.
Well, it was right
what
when you
it
said
feels
that. When you
like-
said, "I know," the stream was 1 hour, 11 minutes, 11 seconds with 11 people watching on YouTube.
See, at that
So-
moment I did know, but it's too bad it passed.
Too late. I broke it.
Yeah, no, that's an amazing thought, because there's an interesting book. It's coming from a scientific point of view, which is in my wheelhouse. I'm so left-handed and right-brained, and to a fault. But Eric Wergo is his name, I believe, and it's about time loops. Do you know what I'm talking about? Have you heard about this?
No.
He wrote a book called Time Loops, but then he wrote his second book. I'm looking for it on my shelf here. That's why. what the hell is that called? It's about dreams, though. So it's all about this idea that he believes in the long self, meaning that our unconscious actually experiences longer into the future than our conscious self understands. And he talks about it scientifically, but by recording your dreams and by paying attention, you start to realize how you can be conscious of your reality ahead of it actually happening, which is, it's fascinating stuff. Here it is.
Well, according to my dream last night, I'm going to be trying to get out of a really boring elementary school and having trouble walking uphill at a very steep and never-ending parking lot where I can't find my car. That was what I dreamed last night.
Sounds nice and restful. Sounds like my dreams.
Can you show that book again? I'm going to make the screen
Yeah,
big.
yeah.
Okay. I don't know if I can.
This is his second book. He has one called Time Loops. But, you know, there's a lot of moments of what I consider synchronicity. And this put a perspective in that I understood. I was like, oh, okay. So I'm actually subconsciously, you know, there's another book from years ago by this surgeon named Leonard Shlain, Art and Physics, it was called. And he was talking about how artistically in any age, there are going to be discoveries that come out visually and through the art and music before it is scientifically discovered. And he makes his art through history of, you know, proving that. So I think it's sort of like that. Yeah. So I don't know. What do you think about that? Going back to the question, really, like, so when I made that album, Then Came Seven, which Hello Spider's on and Purple World, I was at post Lyme or going through Lyme, and at a fierce, the veil was very thin for me at that time from being close to dying and all of that. So I was feeling this very strong connection. And since then, I don't feel as strong of a connection in that way. So when I hear that music back, it's almost as if that's music from the future to me, because I was almost more at an understanding when I made that music that it's
I know
almost
what
like
you're
it's
saying.
from the future teaching me. Yeah. And all of my music and stuff. Hey, Gordy.
Yeah, I brought Gordy on.
Nice.
Hey, Keith, it's good to meet you, man.
Yeah, good to meet you too.
That flow you're on, Keith, I think is really crucial because I can relate, and here's how I will describe it. When I first had like psychedelic experiences, really, that cracked the shell of, you know, ego melting. I won't call it ego death because it was still there, but it melted a lot.
Yeah.
That I actually began to, in a sort of channeling sense, but I just intuitively knew things and had abilities energetically that I lost whenever I got knocked down a few pegs by health and by like attachment issues. Really, attachment
Your
issues.
mind, right? Probably your
and then
mind.
they hurt my attachment issues that like clogged my crown chakra and then polluted everything below. So later, years later, basically what I'm saying is like my 23-year-old self, oddly enough, was very similar to my 32-year-old current self. Like new things that I only know now because I went through study and practice. But there was a brief period where I was like future me for a while. And like really was. And then I forgot it or something. And it's like
and then you become
the future like is a frequency. It's not like it's not a real time. There's not like it's not linear. It's a frequency. And we'll be in the same place looping forever until we change. Till we change.
Pattern,
it's not
right?
time that changes.
Right.
It's weird.
Yeah, well, there's going back to language where we started with clown the crown and crown the clown, is that idea of emitting time, to emit time, just the reverse of those words, is kind of made me understand maintaining life in that sense of what we do as individuals is through our intent is we prolong ourselves. And illness comes in when we're not as committed to that, perhaps.
Slick pulled up a nice comment here that I guess they have a theory from watching The Shining, because they watched The Shining there's a Telegram group that a lot of the people here in the chat are as part of and on Gordy knows about it. Tell us about The Shining, please. Maybe you can elaborate on this because I'm sure you were there for that.
I was not there for that, and I've been neglecting those guys, and I started that group.
What the hell, bro?
I know, dude. I'm a bad friend.
We got an echo from Gordy. Is that true?
That
I think Jim is saying that. Yeah.
Dude, sorry. Let me go out and come back in.
Okay, happened just like 2 weeks ago. It happens, or last week. Anyway, we'll let him try to come back in a different way.
All right. Yeah, I mean, he really went for the jugular with that question. I was trying to get around to it with that different ways of thinking about even your own experience and consciousness and what this is. It's very hard to distinguish. And ultimately, the more I'm realizing all that outer talk of God and angels and all of that, while maybe that's true, or demigods or dakinis and all that stuff, it seems to be archetypes of the self as well. And maybe there's a place where all of that coincides. But it's, again, getting back to the interior experience of things. To know through an experience. And that's how Gnosis is important to me in that sense of being able to find that way to find practices and thinking that lead to experiences that you yourself can know are real.
So we got the confirmation that the echo is good or gone.
All right.
Good. Okay. You know, that's really interesting that you're on the same. Did you kind of find this spirituality with Qigong or this kind of understanding like at the same time? Or was it kind of this near-death?
It's always been
gone through.
Yeah, that's an interesting question because it kind of did. I didn't even know what Qigong was until I had Lyme. I knew what Tai Chi was. I knew, yoga. I had been doing yoga. I'd done lots of Buddhist practices. I was studying Buddhism pretty intensely. I mean, as a kid, when I was 11, 12, I thought I was going to become a priest in Catholicism. And then that eventually flipped and became a whole disheartening experience. But so when I was 16, my older friend gave me a copy of the Tao Te Ching. So that blew me away from that time. So that seed was there for the Eastern thinking very early for me. But it was really when I was looking for a way to deal with my illness that I found Qigong. And that I found a lot of the Taoist practices and shamanic practices that I got into was from that. So it's cool now I'm actually getting back into the because the prayers that I learned from Catholicism, incorporating that into my practices and the Buddhist stuff and the Taoist stuff. And like, it's sort of how I felt growing up as a kid. I'm into art, drawing, painting. I wasn't just like, oh, I'm a bass player. That's what I do. I play bass. Like I did all these things and it felt like losing ground because I'm only getting so far with each thing. But at a certain point, it brings a perspective where you can draw from these different avenues of experience. So I think spirituality is the same way.
Yeah, I've been doing the same thing, like incorporating stuff from here and there, and like it blew up just the last few months. It's been just crazy, like putting an actual protocol and making that protocol a practice. Like
yeah,
you can get some serious connections that are really powerful, and you can actually do that to help others because you can do remote healing that way.
Yeah. And that's the rub for me, is understanding as I get to know myself more, the more I'm willing to look at who I really am means less denial, more objective looking, and being unhappy with the results of what I see. It becomes a difficult spot in there to move forward, because you have to maintain your ground and be like, no, this is where I'm at, and not lay a guilt trip on top of that either. To just
so important what you just said.
Another layer of just getting derailed. Yeah, totally. To be like, no, I'm gonna actually enjoy this now that I'm being this way, or whatever, depending on the situation. Or I'm aware of it, at least. It is what it is. So let's figure out how to keep going.
Yeah, keeping that shame programming out of the way, you know, keeping that from
artificially engineered. I
kicking
mean,
at
there's
us.
times in life where this and it wells up through your instinctual morality. I think human beings have an instinctual morality, and that may be a debatable philosophical concept, but just like you haven't, there's art that you made that's distinctly separate from the larger culture, Keith, that you thought about on purpose to see what would happen if you were trying not to be connected to the larger culture with the creation. I think morality
But
is the
even
same
that,
way.
even that is a tricky one, because like if we look at the collages, I couldn't say that in the same way, and you weren't, but like that would be related to, even collages on board or wood or something would be very related to our approach in the West to what it means to be an artist. And then you could even I mean, everybody, yes, like to do talismans and totems and those sort of objects, which are worked with intuitively that way. And from mining the desert around me, all you have to do is look down. There's stuff that blows all over the place.
Gordy's a desert guy too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Where are you?
I'm in Tucson. Well, southeast of Tucson, and
love it.
I walk the desert every day as kind of a spiritual practice, because I've got a group of owls out there. Speaking of Parliament,
sweet.
So
speaking of Parliament, I caught you say, because Keith made the Parliament reference before, and Gordy was like, Parliament. I didn't make that connection. That's what you call a group of owls. Gordy's the owl guy. Actually, he's Beastmaster Gordy.
So also, when you felt like you got healthy and like your chi was like really hot, like, did you feel like animals were connected to you, or like?
Oh, geez, I had some experiences that were incredible. Like, and that's what I wouldn't trade for. That's what I mean by the Gnosis thing of like having an experience where I'm not claiming I know anything, but that I had an experience that was beyond my normal perception. So I was in the midst of Lyme, depression, all that stuff. I would drive around in upstate New York. That's where I lived, up in the Catskill Mountains. And I would listen to podcasts and try to laugh and listen to music. But this was towards the end. And this is literally when I came out of my depression at that time. I was driving down this mountain road, and it opens up into like a valley that's flat. And across the long field, there's a stream that runs parallel, right? So as I'm driving in the car slowly, I have the windows down, and I just look, and there's a crane that's flying the same with me, parallel, just as we're driving. And I'm just looking at this, and the veil of depression, like the film, I'll say, because it wasn't a veil, the film lifted, and I literally was able to feel sun and feel the energy come back. Because I used to have to go outside, and I'd be like, oh, it feels like, I mean, I guess it's nice out, you know, I can't feel it. It's not touching me. So in that moment it lifted. And then also just getting really quiet. And I remember being on a beach where I was just sitting quietly for like an hour. And and it was at 6 a.m, and all the crabs came out. And they weren't just like when you see them, they're shuffling quick. Like they were chill. They were just with me. They're just sitting there. Like they're all coming out. And just because you're not a threat, you're not there as a crinkle, you know, like you're doing what you're supposed to do. You're not putting out any vibes. Yeah,
I've had this experience with these owls that we're kind of so connected now, because I meditate under their tree, and that's where I started my meditation practice, and that's how kind of we got close, is that I was there every morning, and they would just watch me, and like it's to the point where they followed me home last week. It was
it's been a long-term relationship.
That's
generational.
It's been almost 3 years, and
wow,
2 sets of babies.
That's cool. And they just decided to come follow you home now?
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, you passed the test
on 11/11, which was my recovery date from getting off of opiates and alcohol and all sorts of medication.
Yeah. Wow, that's cool.
On the anniversary,
I made this wand on 11/11. It was born on that day.
What is that you're holding up?
Selenite?
Yeah, this wand
Cool.
I recently
Oh, wow.
built was born on 11/11.
There you
And
go.
as far as I know, it's spoken for, and who was buying it is supposed to be coming through town in 2 days. But if that doesn't pan
Sweet.
out, I'll let people know because it's a heavy one, hefty. But
Yeah, that's cool.
okay, so speaking of selenite and energy clearing, when you said, basically, I got the gist, Keith, that you're talking about having a lot of heavy, unprocessed, maybe even bottled up feels that were for a time keeping you from actually feeling things in your solar plexus and below, like the actual
Yeah.
physical pleasure of being in your body.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
totally
It was
get that. I actually
Stamped
just
down almost
I do
like
too.
you were saying it in this sort of way. It was more this sort of way. Like almost putting a padding between my body and the external world.
exactly.
So it was like not being able to feel and nothing could penetrate that. Yeah.
So here's where I just recently came across this was the last person I had a sound healing session for. I mean, I've been doing it a while, but still not long enough. I'm sure maybe ever, you'll probably never get to a point where you've seen every possible weird thing that can be going on in somebody's aura. But
Right.
this individual, when I measured them with the dowsing rods, which is how I start the process, I measure each chakra with the dowsing rods to see if they're about the right size or shrunk. But
Okay.
lately, I've been getting to learn more about what it's like when they're actually overloaded. So, heart chakra can get swollen up with a backlog of grief. It's usually grief, or it can be just a general depression. But a lot of times, those two things are actually hand in hand. You have grief, if not for people that died in your life or relationships that ended, you have maybe grief for your life itself. And that's what the depression is, in a sense, like grief for like, oh, this wasn't what I thought it was supposed to be or whatever. And anyway,
So you're saying, yeah.
it can get swollen up with the backlog of these emotions, and then the lower centers become shrunk. So I was dealing with somebody who had, like, instead of being about 6 feet off the body, like all of your field should be about evenly, it varies from person to person based on their size. But this guy's heart chakra was like 9 or 10 feet off the body, and his solar plexus down to root were all like 1.5 feet off the body, mega shrunk. And so this is the padding you're talking about. It's this padding. The only way that it can, basically, if you felt anything, you would start to naturally trickle through and feel the backlog of grief too, because pleasure, which is what you're like, feeling pleasure, feeling good in your body, is dictated by these lower centers, especially the sacral. But by not having the one, you're cutting out the other. So shrinking down the good feelings, not being able to feel the sunlight, being disconnected from that, even though you're standing in it, is because there's this buffer. And people do this with weight too. People do this with putting physical weight on their body. That's oftentimes like where it goes next if you have this type of electrical swelling in one energy center. So anyway,
right, interesting.
And then what's cool is it was almost like this is what made me think of it, is because I used a selenite and like a chisel, hammer and chisel with a tuning fork on top of the selenite, like puncture this heart chakra, and like letting the air out of a balloon, I sweep what is coming from this puncture down into the lower centers. And I know this sounds like super woo and totally subjective, but after I do this whole process and then I go back with the dowsing rods and measure their fields, everything's the same size again. And it's like and then the results for them are like, oh, I'm actually feeling more in my body. And so in a poetic sense, I like Khalil Gibran is one of my favorite poets. The Prophet is a really good poem by him. It's a little longer, but not too long. People should look this up. I learned something from this like 2013 chance that I was talking about, who was in the future. Learned this super important thing that I then forgot when I was no longer at the vibrational match to know it, which is that all of your joy and all of your pleasure only exist because of displeasure and sorrow or pain. They're the same exact thing. It's just feeling. It's feeling of what is. And like the same, like you could say in the Hermetic laws sense, that there's not hot and cold. There's just heat.
Right.
There's just temperature and what degree it's at. So anyway, all of that is what you kind of got me thinking about. And like we do this energetically, we pat ourselves to keep ourselves from feeling. And it can even manifest in the body as armoring, whether it's like super hard body or super flab body, one or the other.
Yeah. And that's what it, you know, I'm like anybody else in that way, that it took, well, maybe there are smarter people, there are sometimes, but I needed to be knocked down completely to understand that, to, you know, like had to be taken to critical mass where I couldn't function anymore to learn the lesson. So, and then it's, you know, being healthy again and then falling back in some patterns that could eventually bring back that sort of unconsciousness is really interesting to watch myself revert, you know, and not feel, like we said, feeling shame about that or whatever, but just looking at it and accepting that. And that's all challenge in itself. I mean, that's why it's so difficult for us to change ourselves in any reasonable way, because that intent is met with such opposition. You know, not only from the culture, forget about that. That is instantly going to try to squelch that, but from yourself, from the, it's like you're trying to tell your ego you're going to take it out. And it's like, what, how are you going to do that? Let me get that. Let me write that down. It knows exactly, you know, like my ego knows how to trick me or hold the throne, you know?
Yeah.
So it's a tricky thing. It's a tricky thing to talk about being healthy, because I've done that a few times where then I'm like, I'm giving up my magic here. Like, what am I doing? Why am I talking about what, you know, because I don't want to remind the other parts of myself. So you can see in Flaccid Dick, this conversation that's happening is really what's going on. You know, it's just fun to make it in that, where I'm using a phone with some apps. It's like going into the 99-cent store for art supplies. I like that quality to the stuff, instead of just like, all right, I use Final Cut Pro, or I just go to the art store and I get the best canvas and paint, and to have a sense of play in the stuff, you know? Yeah.
I just pulled some cards from my I Ching deck, since this is such a Taoist talk. And of course, they reflect the dynamic of what you're just saying, because you have conflict right here. Let's see if I can make this bigger. No, that's a comment from the call-in line. Okay. You guys can still hear me, but I'm taking it off screen to make this big. Conflict is the yang, which is like the spirit or your awareness or heaven energy, the upper part. You could definitely say ego lives in there because it's what you're aware of currently. And that is over, or trying to be in mastery over, the abyssal, which is just the deep waters of the unconscious, literally the unknown part of yourself, what you can't see. And that's conflict in the I Ching. It's like will to power, and it's trying to control the part of you that's turbulent and constantly changing, in a sense. And that is opposition in a way. That's being oppositional to what should just be these deep flows that are so vast you could never have enough awareness of them to control them. And then the other card that popped out, influence, number 31. This is the joyous or lake supported by mountain or keeping still. So it's a totally different dynamic, where it's stimulating and connecting between you and something in the external, and feeling good in that in yourself, because the dynamic is the multiplicity of potential, infinite possibility, all the different characters of life, the multiple personas, being completely uninterrupted by anything below, being supported by stillness, right? So just literally having ground for these different forms of life to live on and exist on, in a way where they all can play together. And so it's totally different dynamic. And those two cards popping out, I felt kind of represent what you're talking about there, Keith.
Yeah, that's the will to power stuff's really interesting, because that's something that I look at, because the ability to change is really difficult for me. And there's the will to power, which is sort of the path of where we live in America. Like, you make up your plan, you go, you put it into action, you make it happen. But what Taoism and Buddhism and Christianity are talking about is it's the will of the force, the will of the way, the will of God, whatever you want to call it. It's tapping into not what you perceive to be the way through your ego, but the actual way. And the realization of letting go of this creation of myself is the challenging part for me now. I'm like, oh, but I have more fun as that guy. I don't want I like to make up the way I want to be, the way, the will of Keith. But that's the will that has got me in trouble all the way through it. If it worked, that'd be great. That's one thing. But I keep trying with that. And it folds over into what I expect out of my art, or what I expect out of anything, really. So trying to surrender has a lot to do with this, but to learn that lesson is what I'm going through, of the will of the force, or God even, which is I'm more uncomfortable with that word, but in the ineffable, So, yeah.
Sounds like what I'm into too. And it seems to work for me
It's a
because
good thing we're talking.
yeah, it seems to work
Yeah.
for me. I've been praying every day. I got an altar too. I want to see what your shrine space looks like, because I bet it's pretty souped up. But I've got a question from Jenny B in the chat. Wants to know what's your sun sign, and I'll say also moon rising, because that's fun to know. But Slick Dissident guesses Aquarius. I'm actually guessing Sagittarius. What is it actually?
So I don't know I just know my son. I don't know like the rising.
cool.
I don't know.
That's cool.
So my birthday just was October 28th.
Oh,
So I'm a Scorpio.
I was
And
closer
burn
with
pretty hot. I burn bright that way. So this time of year is usually challenging for me, I think, because it's going into winter anyway. So there's that tendency to, but I was wondering, because it's my birth sign as well, like moving into this, I feel very Scorpion like. It's the time of year where it all comes out for me, so.
There's some interesting scorpion stories in the news, like plague of scorpions in Egypt.
In Egypt, I saw that.
And there's some like new national cyber defense initiative system they just announced called like Scorpius or something. But that's an interesting.
What I liked about.
You go ahead, and then I'll say what I was going to say.
Just the Egypt thing was that the scorpion as a water sign, right? They said that because of the flooding, 500 people were hospitalized by poisonous, scorpion stings that flooded into their homes. But just the fact that the scorpion came through the water too, I thought it was pretty on the nose.
Yeah, pretty symbolic. Absolutely. Well, I associate that sign with purity or toxicity in the negative polarity. So I find that to be a really interesting sun sign for you, and makes total sense with your journey through Lyme disease, because to get past that, it wasn't really about curing Lyme, as I recall. It was about making your body whole again so that it could just deal with whatever.
Same here. Keith, I had a brain tumor, and I was having seizures at night and all sorts of terrible, terrible things. And I essentially kind of did the same thing, diet and meditation and Qigong, like doing real, like authentic healing meditation, and like just digging into that hardcore. Like it's been 3 years.
Wow. That's awesome.
And I haven't had seizures. I lost 90 pounds. And I wasn't trying, but that was the thing, is I wasn't trying to lose weight.
Same with me.
I was just trying to think again, because my brain was so just mush that I was just doing anything I could to fill that back up.
And then what did you do dietarily? What change did you make?
I did no carb, high fat at first. I did a good 3-day fast, went hard into no carb, high fat, and a mix of dark leafy greens and nuts and whatever, meats,
right.
and completely getting good food, just getting truly grass-fed beef or truly grass-fed butter and using the hell out of it. And it made a huge difference immediately.
Yeah, immediately you said, right? I think you're
Yeah.
kind of breaking up.
Yeah, immediately. Like within a month, I was off like starting getting off psych meds and all
Oof,
sorts of
that's
things. Like,
amazing.
everything was
I
fine.
had a similar experience. I switched to carnivore with the Lyme, and I still basically do that, but I found that during the Corona times, I started emotionally eating again, and I just been watching myself, those things creep back from, and then life seems to be that constant interplay of adjusting those things without becoming too lax or too, you know,
obsessive. Yeah.
to oneself.
Yeah.
Keep going,
So, wow,
guys. I like you guys talking. I want more.
Oh, yeah, you were breaking up. I couldn't really hear that. It's getting.
So what would you think? So in that path, your healing path, what do you think helped you the most to get off of everything? Was it like a rebellious spirit? Was it
Yeah,
was it
where did the
like
will
love for your
come from?
family or?
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Yeah. So what I found, I've thought about this in this way, that I knew that I was in a very bad state, but that I wouldn't quit. So that doesn't mean I'm the quickest to change. You know, like my change is still slow and I'm resistant in a way, but I understood that I wouldn't just lay down and give up. So that was a huge relief, really, because who knows until you're in a situation how you're going to react to it. So I had, I'd say that there were so many things, my wife, my family, like those things come first that enabled me the space to heal. But I think the thing, no matter what I would name, comes under the umbrella of my intent of healing. So like I was in the frame of mind where I did a lot of standing Qigong, but my knees were so shot from Lyme and that I couldn't stand anymore. So, I mean, I was using a cane. I was like 90 years old. But my reaction, which surprised me, was in that moment was, oh, I'm going to get really good at seated meditation now because I can't stand anymore. So I was like, okay, if that's my attitude, that's going to carry me somewhere. I knew that, you know. And then to be laid out, I was in bed for like 2 years. So it was pretty significant to take that opportunity to be like, all right, you put yourself here. In some sense, I did, no matter what manifestation the ailment takes in the end, you know, my immune system or whatever, the reason I got so sick and fell apart, you know, I put myself there in that sense. So to just be willing. So yeah, there's that will again. And where do you get that? Because then I also was laying there thinking, well, why can't I get more will than this? Like I want to up the will, but I can feel myself slipping from the next rung of the ladder, you know, like I keep walking that path and then having to get back up. And then I'm like, oh, I got it now. Now I totally got this. You know, I'm not going to make that mistake again. And then I do. And then it's compounded because now I know, I'm conscious of it. So it's a tricky, there's a second time I did that. The Trungpa Rinpoche talking about enlightenment, saying like, it's not some airy, beautiful experience of things. It's being able to withstand a needle in the eye. Right. You know, so I think there's a sort of romanticism to undoing one's ego in the sense of just caring more for everything else except me. Like that's the goal, right? Like I'm included in that, but to not put myself first in every thought of every moment. As I do. And that's the fault of like watching the Flaccid Dick stuff tonight. I'm like, wow, I'm pretty obsessed with myself. That's, you know, like I haven't watched it at all and just like watch you play it for me. I'm like, I like this stuff I do, but I'm a little wrapped, you know, up. So So I'm saying,
Dude,
like, to be
I'm
able
a
to let go.
podcast host. Imagine. Imagine how self-obsessed.
It's hard. I know.
It's really hard.
It's hard.
I've been trying to record my meditation, my desert walks, and I keep having to go back. I'm like, ooh, I do not want to say that. I do not want to say that. I do not want to say that. Because I'm out there as this is my walking meditation. This is where I process the shit of the day, and so that's my practice, kind of, to be alone on purpose. And now I'm like trying to convey shit to people as I'm doing it. I'm like, oh no.
Right. Yeah, I see that. Hey, do you go to Bookman's in Tucson?
Funny you should
Do
ask.
you know that spot?
Say that. Yeah, my daughter, my stepdad used to work there.
Oh,
and
cool.
My daughter had an interview there just this week.
Oh, that's sweet. I have some friends in Tucson, so that bookstore, that chain or whatever, is great. I love it.
Yeah,
It's got all the good stuff, good prices. I'm for it.
They were great because it was, you'd bring in all your old stuff and get all sorts of new ones. And
yep,
I have this treasure trove of mystic books that was left over from my father-in-law when he would just peruse Bookman's for months and months, and just the spiritual. Oh, that'd be cool. Oh, that'd be cool. I wonder what that's.
It's like a fantasy bookstore. Fantasy meaning like of our dreams. That has really cheap, good books, comics, video game stuff, trade-in stuff, but it's just got a good vibe too. So I'm a big fan.
I'm gonna come out and see you soon, Gordy. I don't know how soon, but
dude,
I want to travel.
Come on.
Yeah, and then come through to us. It's not that far. We go, it's like 5 hours or something, I think, from Tucson to Joshua Tree. But we do it because we got friends there. So
yeah, I just need to bank like a month of podcasts and put Vibrate on hold for a month and just go for a trip because it'd be worth it. So many cool things could be harvested out of an adventure like that.
Yeah.
Deserts are the best. Like dry warmth is my jam. And around here, I'm swimming when I go out my front door. Not that I dislike my area.
But that weather, I know, man, it's what drove me here to the desert to fully heal. Like there was a time where I thought I was fully recovered, and then I'd go to another climate. And I'm like, oh, maybe not yet. But it's just so perfect with the dry heat. I mean, there are so many people that are in the desert for that reason,
Oh, for the longest time, I don't think I could live anywhere else. Like I rehabbed in Houston for 30 days. I thought I was going to die. Oh my God.
Yeah.
That humidity is ridiculous. I don't understand.
I can't. I know.
Desert rat. And Chance, you were saying how you sweat to detoxify. Like I am not comfortable if I'm not sweating. If I don't have a good little layer of sweat on me, I'm not comfortable. I can't sleep.
Well, think about this. It just occurred to me in our temperature controlled world, right? Where the goal is to never break a sweat and cover your armpits with aluminum and all this
to prevent that.
But I mean, I just can't help but think of anything outside of the terms of electricity now. It's all electric, and your sweat is salty, and the salt is actually what is the conductor of electricity. So in terms of gaining more electrical sensitivity to not just the outer world and the reality on a sixth sense, more connected, more intuition sense, but it's also your own field, your own bubble space that you're maybe projecting more strongly, or could somehow be more cohesive if you had that nice layer of the salt crystals of sweat on your skin. I'm just thinking out loud, but that would make sense that it would naturally, because you, Gordy, what I've gleaned from what you share and the natural and intuitive way that you've developed in energy practice and body practice, that whatever you say is like, this just feels better, or I don't feel comfortable without this. Like I sang to my dinner when I was cooking it tonight because of you, and it was delicious.
Nice.
Like I trust your judgment. Man. So whenever you say like I like to be
sing
sweaty,
to my dinner,
there's
like
something
that.
to that. Yeah,
I do it all the time. I'm so glad you brought up salt, because I've been doing this thing because I really have been trying to do my cooking as a flow practice, a meditation practice, right? And so I I sing to my food, and all my recipes, I'm going to put a accompanying song, because you should sing to your food, because when you're singing something decent, you're not going to be putting out bad vibes. Your chi is going to be better, and which is going to make that thing better for you. The crystals in whatever it is, it blesses the water. That's why I sing.
Yeah.
I sing in the morning when I make coffee, and I put tons of cocoa and whatever speaks to me that day. Like lately, I've been craving cayenne pepper and chili and garlic. And I realized this week is because I was having some intestinal things and joint things. Like, oh, of course, those are the things that for anti-inflammatory and gut health. So if you listen to your body, it'll tell you what you need. When you're cooking in flow, it'll tell you what you're craving. You're not just looking in the refrigerator for something to fill a hole.
It's such a foreign concept for us. I know that, like in the Greek mystery schools, they'd say once you reach that level of enlightenment, that you'd be able to just pick up an instrument that you don't know how to play and you could play it. And I've had experiences, moments of that it's
I've
not
seen
something
people do
learned.
that.
It's not learned, right? Yeah, it's that you are aligned, and then you can do whatever. It's it's pretty.
I've seen crazy
it
works on LSD teach themselves to do something in 2 hours that other people take 5 years to get to that level.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah,
endorsing
so
you to go out and do LSD. I'm just saying I have seen this happen before, and it's like they did.
No,
and
it's
real.
ways of getting out of the way of the conscious self, right?
And well, when we talk about something that is a skill-based flow state, it's actually a frequency like anything else, because everything's a frequency. It's a movement. It's a way you're oscillating, and thus, as a movement, it is a frequency. Period. So
yeah,
what I've witnessed, I brought this up before, but I love this as an example. When I first started going to music festivals, there were some girls at the festivals and a couple guys, but mostly females, that were hula hooping, and they were very good.
Right.
And it was like, wow, this is impressive. And then within 5 years, there were 10 times more girls hula hooping, and their skill level collectively was through the roof compared to just 5 years before. And what I noticed was that new people who picked up the hula hoop for the first time, caught up to where the collective was in a few months, where the people who were innovating it 5 years before are also at the same level of the wave that the collective is at.
Yeah.
So it's like there are neural pathways that are also synchromistic pathways or etheric pathways.
Synchromistic.
They're etheric pathways that resemble a mine, like a tunnel. And there's people digging at the edge of that tunnel, just like, every Olympic, someone breaks an unbeatable record. They're digging at the
And
end
then
of this
everybody
tunnel,
can do it. Yeah.
and anyone who enters the tunnel can, they still have to travel through the tunnel, but instead of digging through it, they just can jog till they get to where everyone else is at the wall. And this
Because
is what we are as human beings, as in the larger sense, why there's more than one of us instead of just like the singular omni consciousness God. Why would it want to split? Is because by splitting, it's not really splitting. It's like mitosis, is multiplication, and each one of us has a full 100% undivided awareness that we could put towards something that it expands the reality. Like we build like a web across the chasm of the abyss through generations. Yeah. It's really amazing. And then that's what keeps us from feeling like we're falling through the endless void. That's why that's
what real culture is, right? That's real culture there.
Exactly. It even resembles a petri dish culture, what I'm describing.
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
Mm-hmm. The tree.
Dendrites. Yeah. Anyway, that was my vibrant of the night.
I like it.
Nice.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, 2 girls on LSD speaking in ancient German dialect they had never been exposed to before. It happens.
Yeah, it happens. It does.
100th monkey kind of shit. Yeah, that is another example of what I'm talking about. Morphogenic fields, Rupert Sheldrake calls it.
There you go.
Keith, do you have psychedelic? Did you toy with psychedelics at all?
Oh yeah, I played hardball.
Home
Yeah,
run.
not
Grand
anymore,
slam.
but but yes, because I found the more that I did, I reached a point where it felt more like blinders in the sense that if I took mushrooms or LSD, that it gave me a certain feel that I became accustomed to, that I think I limited myself in there. So, or I got what I needed at the time. So I haven't done too much. Although the most recent was pre-COVID. I saw somebody that had a DMT pen, which was a vape pen, which was I was in a crowded place doing that, which was not optimal, but I didn't want to pass up the moment. So
The
but yes,
Shakti strikes, you can do it anywhere. That's the wild thing. But if you get in your head and you're like, oh, this is not a good environment, right as you're doing
oh no,
it,
I was
good
like,
luck.
let's do it, let's go.
Yeah.
But
Chance,
yeah,
did you just say? Did you say when Shakti strikes?
I
when
mean,
Shakti
that's
strikes.
that's what DMT is. Shakti is striking you with the lightning bolt, and in your external reality, it's coming through as the narrative that you're hitting a DMT pin, but actually you're getting taken up to the Godhead temporarily. It can
There
happen
you
with or
go.
without a psychedelic, but for a lot of us right now, in our limited example of what life could be, that's the only story that we can give ourselves to have that experience. But it's there. It's always right there.
Yeah, and then I found from doing meditation retreats and that sort of thing, I did one where it was you kept your eyes open for the whole weekend. So it was about expanding instead of inward, outwardly into the room, into the world, and all of that. So at the end of it, I was totally straight, just meditating for the weekend. I'm looking at the teacher up at the front by the shrine, and the walls are all tripped out, like when you're hallucinating on acid. And I was like, oh, it literally is possible just from meditating, like to have that same visual trick that or whatever experience that you have when you're tripping from just sitting there long enough. That's all it takes.
Yeah, a 3-day fast and meditation like tripped me out. It
I had an
was
out-of-body
crazy.
experience from fasting.
Did you?
Like flying around my
Yeah.
house, looking down at myself.
Yeah.
That was spontaneous. It only happened once. I've never had one quite that defined, but it was at the end of a fast.
Yep. Yeah, that's the interesting part about being that close, not to, or being ill and being close to the next thing of death.
Yeah.
In my experience of that was that all of the experience in the way I was feeling, as difficult as it was, it felt natural and normal. I was like, oh, you could do this. This is what people do. This is okay. So it's almost as if I'm in more tension post that than there was a certain acceptance of things. And I don't know what's happening in the mind at that time, except it wasn't terrible.
I think about that in the terms of getting rid of the good evil paradigm of that the yod and that symbol of the two converging at the 45-degree angle, which is a 9, into one, and put that into context with how actually the closer you are to death, the more alive you feel in some ways. And maybe there's a coming mode of consciousness for humanity, or for some of us, where there's not life or death. It's just what it is. And we're both and neither. And we can just drop that paradigm and surf indefinitely.
That was the other thing I wanted to bring up, was the liminal spaces. You were talking about music, and I've been talking about this, and Cheney had brought it up again too, that that Charles Mingus quote and Debussy quote that music is in the spaces, that it's between the notes, and that we should be looking in the liminal spaces. And I've been kind of,
what you got in your pocket?
Yeah, I mean, it's all here, dude. It's all here. Whatever you want it, it's. I mean, it's hard to convey that to anybody who hasn't had that kind of.
Think about how magic works. You write intentions down on a blank piece of paper. You go to the empty, and like you find what you're looking for in it. If that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. Which is where God is.
Yeah. Yeah, I think maybe it's in the Thomas Merton one, The Way of Chuang Tzu, the introduction,
Yes.
but it's talking about, that's my favorite. It's talking about this, I think it's in that one, but it's saying basically, if you can read that way where you're reading the in-between, I was like, right away, I was like, thank you. You summed up that flip of what reading can do for you. It's not that somebody's telling you consciously what's going on, but you're entering this opening to something bigger than that. And that's not even well said. But I think you know what I mean. I hope
I get it though. I get it because
yeah.
the words on the page, even if they've been translated 3 times or 10 times to different language, each successive generation of that creation is still the child of its parent. And its parent,
right,
if it was truly inspired divinely as a creation, the parent was purely source. So maybe it gets diluted, but just like homeopathy, you can never really take the essence out of anything once it's got that essence.
Right.
Essence is all it ever was in the first place. And however much gross material there is surrounding that essence, it just makes it that much more maybe of an alchemical process to get through to the essence. And that means even with the Bible translated to English, if you understand the alchemy in it, then you can get to the essence in it, even though it's not in the right language anymore, or it's closer to the original transmission.
Yep. Which is also a reason why people want Christianity to exist with the Latin as a more mantric language that was closer to the source. So it's an interesting perspective, like saying, no, we should keep the old language alive. But yeah, that's really the other site I didn't mention that to you guys. There's another site that has every English translation from the Tao Te Ching. And it's a comparison chart just going across, and you can read each chapter in all the translations, which is really cool to look at. For that very reason, to be like, what is the source that's coming through all of the translations, and then what is the other interpretation that's giving it a little flavor that you didn't really consider before, that's coming at you in a new way, you know? So it's interesting, like, to think and talk all this way, but I noticed in myself, like, I do that and I have practiced all that stuff, but yet some of it is automatic and robotic in the sense, like, why am I not reading to my ancestors and to my dead friends? Like, why is it, like, I know that's a real thing, or that's my belief in my experience. Like, why am I not, you know what I'm saying? Like, and I have been, but it's something that I have to have practices. It's not automatic yet, this true belief, you know, in what's going on. And we're talking about that, Chance, with what you were, I'm dancing around something I'm trying to verbalize, but the reason that we're not,
that we don't jump in with both feet.
Yes, but there's some sort of lack of belief in me that leaves me in the state that I'm in, unfulfilled. But that's because of what's happening in me, not anything other than that, right? Wouldn't that be?
So to go
if
back
everything's
to
perfect in that sense.
The beginning of the live chat, the first thing said in the live chat was by you. And you said something like, what is it? Happiness what?
Oh, happiness is not pursuing happiness.
Yeah, knowing
That's
instead of believing, being it instead of thinking it, all of that.
And yeah, exactly. Not even formalizing it as a thought to realize, you know, not even coming up with that problem to solve.
So I want to ask the people.
That seems to be the gist of it.
I want to ask the people in the chats if they have any questions they want us to get to. I'm going to otherwise start moving us towards the goalpost, because we're through the 2-hour line, and I'd rather just do another one than go on. Although I mean, I like going on. We can go for a while, but I want to maybe like make the intention of sort of wrapping up and closing thoughts. So if you guys have any questions that you want to riff off each other, Gordy and Keith, go for it. I'm not like actually putting a kibosh on it, just respecting that was the original agreement with Keith, and we can keep going for a
Yeah,
while.
sure, man. That sounds good. Yeah, whatever. I'm down. So, yeah.
It's always tough. I'm like, I don't want to end it, but like that's kind of the format. But also, why have a format that's like these are you
Well, I
hear
get
the
it.
producer chance persona
I'm
coming
down for
out.
talking more if you want to keep going. So that's up to you. But if you want to call it, you can call it. No worries.
Well,
Conrad
yes.
wants to know what's your best motivator. The wind in my sails. That's the answer.
Giving
No,
up,
It sounds
I
so
don't.
surrender.
I don't use
man.
motors.
I'm not super motivated. That's a weird. What motivates me?
Well, think about that
Obsession.
word though. It has. This
Obsession
is not
the-
to call out Conrad, but it's like motor is a combustion engine, right? Versus sailing. I don't know. That's the way I answer that question.
Yeah, interesting. That's the will stuff again, maybe.
Flow
Yeah.
state versus force, using the force, being a part of the force instead of trying to wield the force. Light side, dark side type stuff.
Yeah. I'm still thinking about this question about what motivates me. Jeez Louise. That's a tough one. What motivates? I mean, I know how I live, and from an early age being into drawing and music and stuff, like that I have a certain way I walk around and what I have with me that it lends itself to being in a state of creating pretty much all the time. So it doesn't take much motivation from there. Maybe that's where the motivation was initially, but it's already in gear. That's just how I am and think. So something's going to come of it. But by having, carrying a book or with me and mishearing what people say or writing down, playing with language and all of those things as a practice manifests in work eventually.
What do you think, Gordy? You got any thoughts on motivation?
Perfect understanding.
I was thinking you were going to say
movement.
clarity, clear.
Yeah.
That was the word buzzing into my head is clear.
Yeah.
Because you were talking about
Yeah.
how you weren't even intending to lose the weight, right? You just wanted to be able to think again. But
Yep.
thinking, when you break it down, is just a form of sensory communication, like anything else. It's an interface to the isness. So to be able to think clearly again is sort of the base of all other forms of feeling, even if you're doing it without consciously putting thoughts overlaid. It's through the same operating system that you're getting sense of feeling, if that makes sense. It's internal.
Yeah. Well, I think you gain a different understanding when I should probably think. I should think about what I say before I say them.
Should you?
No.
I almost never do.
Seems to work out so far.
The only time I think before I speak is when my brain's like thinking of what I should say instead of listening to somebody else. But I see you.
No, I'm
not trying to do that.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to get to that flow state to let it speak through me. Like that's the understanding, is to understand that to get yourself out of the way so that spirit can, like your true self, can speak.
It's
because paradoxical, because when you're there, you're not getting yourself out of the way anymore. There's no doing that. But when you're not doing that, you're like, how do I do that?
Right.
It's paradox.
That's the liminal space. It's the cat that's dead and alive at the same time. It has, it's a binary with an indeterminate value.
You're the line in between the binary, so it's trinary. You're the line in the middle of the yin yang, not the white or the black.
Right.
It's the nibbles.
The center line. Yeah,
It's
I mean,
the
what
wave.
you're saying, Gordy, reminds me when I look up into space, and what I think is there's nothing between us and the moon, but that's infinite potential, the pregnant potential of everything. And that misinterpretation, or that, is what misaligns me from that I don't get reality, because everything is here concurrently at once happening. But I see not emptiness, I see nothing, and not in the positive nothing. It doesn't register. That's what I'm trying to say. And that's on us to not be able to perceive the larger implications.
And that nothing though between you and the moon is totally, like you said, pregnant, because they're different perception bandwidths that we can access with technology, oddly enough, that show you all kinds of like weird electric snake seraphim beings up there. Well, I don't remember the name of the
Yeah.
telescope that came up on the Vibrant with Jim, with the like lenses facing each other where they're seeing like reality and it's negative at the same time. If I'm not getting
Wow.
that incorrect, but that there's an ecosystem even in that emptiness. It's just empty from our vantage, but
Right.
emptiness is always subjective like everything else. So there's like the atom is technically empty as well. It's
Yeah.
very weird. Yeah, we're in this liminal zone hardcore right now.
That's
Santilli
where I
is
like to
what
be, though.
Jim
That's the
said
sweet
is the
spot.
name of the telescope. Maybe explain in like I'm two in a sentence what makes it work, why it does what it does, just because that's a really interesting point to point out to people. And another question that's in the chat from Nova. People say this to me all the time, by the way. I am trying to pick a correct time to rewatch Being There. Do you feel any connection to that movie? And I've never seen that movie, but it gets brought up to me like every 2 months. Someone asks
Being
me.
There. What is that one?
Being There.
Yeah, someone look that up
I
for us.
feel
I
like
get
it
asked that all
sounds
the time.
familiar.
Is that because the character, is that the one with the character that's named like Chauncey Gardner or something? Is that why you're bringing that up?
Let's see.
Peter Sellers? No.
Oh, it's a Peter's. Well, that is a Peter Sellers one, but I don't know if I know this movie.
I don't know if we're talking about the same one. Shirley MacLaine and Peter Sellers?
Thoth Mark says there's no true void in space. The void has no space. So
The void has no space.
the Tao that can be named is not the Tao. Even what we think that we perceive as the void isn't the void because it's in space. Dude, this is
So
getting
what's the
trippy.
problem I find, like, without talking about money, the capitalist side of art is that problem. So the criticism would be that we develop our personalities, the ego, to do well in this space at the neglect of that unfolding of art through you for the reason of expressing it for itself. That's enough in and of itself. So that's sort of my trouble moving in this world, and even the motivation for making work. So back to that question of what motivates me, I think frustration. That's the answer that comes, is that I'll realize if I'm out of whack, something needs to be fixed or worked on, and it could be painting, like literally that way, or in my body. So yeah, frustration is an indicator and a motivator.
It's very yang for the frustration to be the
come from
motivator.
that, right?
It comes through in Flaccid for sure. He seems frustrated.
Well, you said that about me even before the first time we talked about being totally yang. You know, I was like, yeah, I guess I am.
Yeah, got to figure it all out.
Does it come in anger?
Oh, what? A yanger?
This one's been a banger. It's been a good episode.
I like that better. I was going to say anger. Does it come out in
anger?
Anger.
Do I have anger?
Does it come out in your art, the anger?
Oh, is there? It was breaking up again. Were you saying, is there anger in the art? Does it come from?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I felt that, especially the pandemic time, like, oh, my feelings at 13 of like a punk rock attitude are still there. Like that's not it's and I was right. like that's how I feel about it.
Right. Because
maybe I'm nuanced, but on the right track.
Heroes like have pushed out and like are playing the system, being played by the system. Like where was your punk rock ethos when we were growing up? Like all
the fake punks taking the real cowpokes.
I'm like, wow, we're not the posers. You were. All these jackasses that were telling
Rage
us
with the
we were
Machine.
losers. Fuck them. Fuck them, man.
Hey, so I want to play another Flaccid thing on
Yes,
Instagram because we were getting so close to the monochord there. Let's
To the which one?
the monochord. I want to play this one
Uh-huh.
where you're talking about the alphabet.
Oh, good. I was thinking about that one. Yeah. Check that
Yeah,
out.
this one was on my list. Okay, the sound is on. Making sure. All right, here we go. This one's like a minute and a half.
Okay, I'm gonna school you.
Okay, go ahead.
School time.
Right away.
The alphabet is both esoteric and exciting.
We all love hearing it. Yeah, no, explained away. Go ahead, please.
Okay, so God, I is first, right? But we begin with A. Why is that?
Me? Oh, I just thought it went A, B, C, D. Right?
Then remember, you don't know what you're talking about.
You look for real? No, for real? For real, for real.
When the one is divided into two, you see the I split into an upside down V. I'll teach you your language, fool. The V tethers the polarity. Many times one leg is thicker. I said because it was an ox or a house. Yeah, no, it goes way
Are these-
deeper than that.
Whoa, so it's telling the whole story of the birth of creation?
Take a peek. Couple peeks.
So you're telling me with this sacred tool, I'm gonna go and sleep better now. A, B, C, D.
Okay, I'm gonna school.
I like that one. I never thought about the A as a split I, bridging the polarities. And see, that's some great little mystery school cool. And he looked like
Yeah.
Flaccid looks like a Sasquatch to me in that one.
That's good. I mean, that's important. Like Sasquatch is important to me. Not that I intended him to look like Flaccid Dick, but just that concept, like going back to that pregnantness in things like cryptoids, I have to keep room for them. Like it's a weird idea to put something in that category, like Bigfoot, and to build up an idea that that's ridiculous when we discover things all the time, new species or whatever. And it's plausible that Bigfoot exists. So just that idea of Bigfoot, I got to rep it for him to hold that mind space, to hold that possibility.
Keith, do you know about the triops?
I was thinking that too, man.
The triops?
Okay, so in the desert, we've had the largest monsoon we've had on record, right? Because we've had so much rain that we had triops show up in our pools here we go, these things. In the desert. So these were eggs that were in the soil for some they can be dormant for decades. And these have been came back this year because the monsoons were so strong it woke up all these three-eyed, this is why they call them triops, three-eyed little species that's shown up in the desert down here.
I mean, that is just so symbolic.
That is wild. The three-eyed, you're saying?
Three-eyed. I mean, that's super symbolic. But to me, why
sure.
that's so relevant to Sasquatch is just because I personally am open to the idea that extinction is just a narrowing of our perceptual bandwidth. And it manifests in the physical world as destructive cycles, but that the regeneration in nature is intrinsically linked to our increasing of sensitivity of truth and self. If that makes
How so?
sense. That the outer world will regenerate to the degree that we become the phoenix in our own self, like rebirth, a truer awareness of who and what we are outside of the personas, outside of the culture, the alchemical the enlightenment destructive process, the removing of the the squishy layer of armor that keeps us from capital R reality. That process in
Right, the
ourselves,
inserted layer.
that process, healing that will actually heal the world literally, and even bring a wider range of possibility to life forms and how life force energy can manifest. Just like, okay, to put it simpler, they used to believe that if you left rotting or left meat out to rot, that the maggots were just appearing out of thin air in the meat. If that was like a belief. And I'm not saying it's exactly like that, but I am saying that maybe there's like the whole idea of what the telescope can see that we brought up. You know, what else is dormant in the sense that it's just sleep. It's on the part of ourself that's asleep, waiting for us to wake up to it again. And then it'll be there in the world again. Which means that all of the clowning from the crown about how, like, you naughty, naughty people, you're destroying the earth with all of your horrible, horrible gassiness. And that is all just like that. All that programming is to keep people asleep to a wider possibility of life and potential of life. And that it's really the belief that the world can be destroyed by us, or that we could end life, which is eternal life force energy. Yeah, right. You can't end that. It's
right.
That's why the crown is a clown, to go full circle here. They're literally pranking us. It's not even possible. They're what it is, the worldview that they poison people with is the impossible, because it limits the infinite.
Yes. And makes them, the ones in power, essential. So that's the old gimmick, right? You know, like of needing protection in your town. You got to pay the people to protect you, and they're the ones you got to worry about. So yeah,
it sounds like the medical industry. Oops, you didn't hear me say that, YouTube. Gordy knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do. Yes, I do.
Is that a mic drop, or we keep going, guys? You tell me. I want to know your thoughts. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep rambling.
I'm good for a little bit, man. If you like I said, you can let me know. I can go a little more if you want to talk about it.
Got room for another caller too,
you guys.
Keith, can I ask you about your experience with the medical system with your Lyme disease?
Oh yeah, it's put a damper on things.
We were just having fun.
What a drag.
I know. Yeah, it was eye-opening, because it's one thing if the response from doctors was, hey, we don't know what's going on, and we're doing our best. But that was not how they treat people with Lyme. It's defensive, and it's confrontational. And I was faced with people laughing at me and like just stuff that you're like, what? You know, as the medical system has changed too, to go through it that way, where you can't even, you feel like the guys, you know, the doctor's looking at their watch as soon as they walk in the door. So it was challenging to find. I found an osteopath that would sit with me and talk about everything, and then write prescriptions if I needed it. But yeah, it was very disheartening. So basically, I found a like a rebel doctor who would work with me, who wasn't cool himself. But my wife and I self-diagnosed. We figured out what was going on and got him to give me scripts to help. But no, it wasn't a positive experience. And, you know, if I need to have surgery or something, since then I had knee surgery too, and that was a good experience. But I would just be selective with, you know, well, not selective, but to just take it with a grain of salt. After my experience, I couldn't, you know, it wasn't, like I said, I had some good experience with particular people, but overall, like, there's a vibe of defense and aggression coming from the medical community. So that you know, certainly colored my feeling about it.
Especially if
they
shout
out to your wife Jen too, for being probably such a hero for you at that time. That's your wife's name, right? Keith? What's your wife's name?
You were cutting out there. I'm having a Jen.
Yeah, I want to shout her out because you mentioned in the episode we did in 2019, how she took over the research into Lyme for you so that you wouldn't have to like go through all of the, because that's part of the WebMD culture. Hypochondriac things are always
It's
worse on
crazy.
paper.
And
Anyway,
it's
so shout out
controversial
her.
because this, yeah. So yeah, she saved me from that for sure. She saved me from a lot of things in that situation, but that being one, like to not add that stress of having to research all of this. You know, it's like today when you're trying to figure something, you're like, oh my God, there's every opinion out there, and everybody's shouting at me. So I don't, you know, what am I supposed to do with that? Yeah. So how about you? What was your experience like?
Oh, it was horrendous. You know, 1,000
Yeah.
specialists and 1,000 prescriptions to go with each one. You know, it was ridiculous, and nobody knew
You walked away
anything.
from all of that not good medicine. So I'm just pulling random
Yeah.
cards while you talk.
No, it was ridiculous. I think about it a lot. 'cause
Nice. That's good.
That even this summer, I haven't been back to any of those doctors. I've been maybe, I don't know, in almost 3 years. I went back once to rub it in one endocrinologist's face because I wanted to know my levels and everything. And I went in, got my lab work, and she's like, "Oh my God, what are you doing?" I'm like, "Not you. That's what I'm doing." Like whatever they were saying, I was going against that, and it was working. So I'm going to keep doing that.
Yeah.
Conrad asked if we've heard of Brown's gas. That's actually going to come up in a future episode with George Weissman. That'll be, I think, in January. So sit tight. Yeah, there's a few questions about Lyme from the chatters. I figured maybe we'd have to go here. Illuminati wanted to know if you thought they came from deer ticks. That's, you know, you are right next to Fort Detrick, where all kinds of wacky stuff seems to happen to people whenever you got it. So what do you think?
That came through kind of really convoluted, but not because of what you said, because it got crunched up. But you were asking about Lyme disease coming from deer ticks?
Fort Detrick, I mean deer tick.
Well, remember when we spoke about it last time, Chance, you asked me about that, like Plum Island and all that stuff. And
that's what Illuminati
my
wants
reaction.
to know.
What's that?
That's what a chatter wanted to know.
The way that I take it is like, it's sort of, it doesn't matter to me, because it's like when you're on fire, you just put the fire out. It doesn't matter who started it in that moment, you know, like, so that was, I can get conspiratorial about stuff all day long. So, but that was not even near my mind dealing with it. It was just a lot more close to home.
Yeah. And that's such a good perspective. Just put the fire out, because I mean, why would it matter how you got on fire in the moment when you're on fire? And also, if you probably in some way, if all is self, you stepped into that burning bush, set yourself on fire, even if it's, you know, blaming things on an external boogeyman. There is not a lot of use in that when you're actually needing the healing. But as a topic of investigation to maybe like prevent other people from catching on fire, like after you're out of the fire, to find out how you got there, could be useful.
Yes.
But it's also very speculative, because I mean, we're in a whole new world 2 years out from cooties, where I'm no longer even accepting the paradigms of disease that were originally entrained into us. I don't know how things work now, but I'm more on the side of that everything is some kind of like nutritional deficiency or engineered toxicity, rather than there really being these things out there in the world called that we call bugs that nature made just to fuck us up. Like that doesn't seem as plausible anymore.
Yeah.
That when that does happen, it moves through a population because of that population all sharing some kind of deficiency as a group or multiple deficiencies. But these are just possibilities. I'm just open to new possibilities about disease in the first place, and how you got better was through like radically strengthening your body, not through finding the way to kill the bug. So that all makes sense.
But it did help me with keeping a perspective of assuming that I'm always under attack by something. Like for real, you know, like, and not to in a paranoid way, but to realize like there are things microscopically all over me that could be causing me damage right now. And you know, and that's what that's what reality is. So we have a weird
everything's food for something.
Misunderstanding of that. What's that?
Everything's food for something. Life eats life.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
That's a tough one.
I've been thinking about that that kind of idea of letting that part go, you know, of letting go that, you know, you're not going to be okay, and that's okay too.
Nobody makes it out alive.
Yeah, I mean, but it's also taking responsibility for that thing. Is how you get it started. You have to take responsibility for you, and that I think maybe that's the rebellious nature. Or
go listen to the episode with
really
Keith when you can, Gordy.
Yeah, I got through half of it, and
I shared it late. Oh, you did get into it some. Cool.
Yeah,
it's a really good one. It's a gem in the archives. I'm telling everyone, check it out.
But so you got a lot stronger this year because of that, Keith.
I came out. I was on fire, man. The last 2 years have been good. I mean, I was playing shows again, and I don't know if we talked about that at all. That was probably
you were about to start again.
Yeah,
you had just
and I got
started
to, and my energy was through the roof. I've gotten a little bit less. Like I feel the pandemic has played its toll, has had its toll too.
Just in like the change of how opportunities work.
Yeah,
you know,
and questioning what is the fabric. So like, it's interesting. I always assumed as I'm working on myself, this volatile person, that there's a continuity to the outside world that you could count on, and that was my mistake. It's not, you know, you can't count on that. So it's a strange thing to finally have things kind of come together for myself and family and all of that, and then the world is like this wild place now. But that's, you know, what you learn to ride. That's it. To what end too? It's like, for what purpose? Because it's infinity, and it's frustrating that there's a monolithic answer from the culture of what that answer should be. You know, it's like, well, we're in infinity. Can we remember that? It's like when I talk to a friend who's become a devout Catholic, wasn't even raised in that, but became that, chose that. And to talk to somebody who's playing just for one team in that way, I just like to tell them, hey, this is really infinity. If that's the path you choose, that's great, walk it. But if you're thinking you're right, that's a weird, that's some kind of weird thinking. I don't relate to that. Like, what do you need to win for? Make up your reality, walk it forever. And you can follow a path that all these other amazing people have walked before you, and they've laid it for you. You can do it.
This is a thing that a lot of healing arts people will, I don't know if I've heard many people say this or they're reluctant to say it, but energy work or energy healing is really similar to creativity, because at the end of the day, you can never be 100% sure if it's something that came through you and was like, quote unquote, real, or if you made it up.
Right.
And that's like, I'm making it up as I go. And that's just a fact of life. And if we all recognize that, we can make up a game called I win, you win, instead of I'm right and mine was right and yours was the fake one.
Right.
And there's going to be it's not like everything is relative either. You know, we're talking about in our path. There's an actual existence, a shared perceptual experience of reality, shared energy. What I do that makes someone feel some type of way, they really did feel that way. But there's also on a layer on top of that. It's like predetermination, predestination, and free will. There's a layer on top of that actual feeling that was created and existed of the story, where someone you punch them and they're like, why did you do that? I'm so sad you did that. And then somebody else would be like, hit me again. Yeah. And they'd be all stoked about it. So there's still, it's the same feeling. It's really weird. It's really weird. So I like to play I win, you win. I think that's the direction of the age of Aquarius. And there's a lot more freedom with
inclusiveness for sure, and revealing what's been hidden more, I think. And the internet has to do with that as well. Just people being able to share and talk about stuff that wasn't a thing before as readily available, like people are spreading some pretty wild esoteric ideas. And there are problems with that too. Like if it's a new agey sort of thing, and there could be potential problems with that, but just that there's an interest and hunger is really the word.
Yeah. And
to figure out how to navigate this world in this time,
A lot of us even got on the stage to some degree because we felt like we were lacking attention. Like in a weird, trippy sense, we were creating a story or a way where we had to pay more attention to ourselves to
force yourself to deal with it, because
you force yourself to have self-awareness.
Yeah, I hear that.
It's a real thing. So it comes from a place of like, a lot of people will get stuck in there and not be ready to change though. And then they're the teacher who is teaching you what they don't know yet. There's a difference between making it up and faking it. And that's another paradox.
Yes, because what you're saying is really reality is made up. So it involves, meaning it's a verb, right? It is the activity of our experience. Yeah. And its participation has everything to do with it. I don't want to point to the because scientists always say it's misunderstood, but the particle wave experiment. I know physicists always say, the New Agers with what you think, but yeah, there is, like, if as just a general criticism of science, to say, okay, I get it if you want to try to be objective, but if you're not considering yourself as part of the equation of what reality is, and like that's your
exactly
why would what we're doing.
Why would there be an observer effect provable by science themselves? Had it not be it's the observer effect. You're changing it because you are there.
And that's how I understand it, or the tree falling in the woods. I mean, everything that is reality is because of our perceptual acuity. And you change that perception and you have a different reality, or you add perception or take away perception. So that's
like the aperture of a camera lens.
Yeah. Or like you were saying, the microscope before, what's fascinating to me is whatever tool we create, we're going to find something we're looking for. That's endless. That's the infinity, like, because we're making it up and we're not. It's like what you were saying, like there is a core existence of what's happening, yet our interplay with that is not understood by us. So it becomes very nebulous. It's like your question, is that art coming, or are the ideas coming through, or the inspiration, or is it being generated, or is it the same thing, Do
you feel like you've channeled? Been like, okay, so when you're in flow in a group, like, I don't know if you've ever played jazz, but flow. When you're in sync with other musicians, and it just happens, and somebody like pulls out some sweet lick, and everybody's like, what?
Yeah.
And everybody in there starts playing better.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's for performing music, that became the main thing, is to be out of the way of myself, in myself, so that I can do the job I'm supposed to do, which it always goes out of the way as soon as I think I'm doing good, or feeling cool about doing what I'm doing, because when you can be in the room and let that come through, it's really just doing your job. And then the room becomes, something happens in there because of it, because you allow it to come through that way.
For me, actually feeling good doesn't get in the way though. It feels good to be in that state.
It feels great. What I mean, ego wise, of being like, I'm, giving a little bit, I'm doing this. This is me doing this. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. Like, oh, look what's happening right now because of me, and that instantly kills something. So I've been in that experience too. But that becomes the point of playing live, is to, especially with some of the performance stuff I would do, I'd love to go to a rock club and then just have a more performance art thing happen in that space, because you're expecting one thing and all you have to do is shift it a little bit. And all of a sudden people are like, whoa, this is a rock club. What is going on right now? You're not just doing this and playing your thing. There's something else happening. That's a great place for that to happen. And just shifting it that little bit. It's like, I'm not shifting it a little bit with Flaccid Dick. I mean, that's real. I'm like turning it completely. So like, I was testing my parameters with that. Like, oh yeah, you want disgruntled punk rock 13-year-old. Like, I'll show you as far as I can go with it. You know what I mean? So to me, it's pretty obnoxious in that way and satisfying. Like, okay, I found my line.
Well, we'll play us out in a minute with Diet Kong. Like very, very palatable and smooth, very well crafted and flowy at the same time.
That sounds great, man. Well,
and
it was awesome.
People should find him on Spotify too, because there is really some good stuff there. You can sing along.
Yeah, it's definitely melodic stuff. I do like melody, so check it out.
Dude's a really good singer. But yeah, let's get some closing thoughts. I think I'm ready to make it happen.
Sounds good.
Gordy, you got anything to wrap up? Any loose chads you have?
I'm looking up Diet Kong on Amazon Music.
Oh, cool.
Yes.
Are we not? Oh, yes.
So you know what, Gordy, you might want to check out. There's a bunch of albums. There's one called Then Came Seven.
That's what we're going to play the title track from.
And this is what I wrote after dealing with Lyme and all that stuff. It was that
it's really a breakthrough album, like literally
breakthrough album for me, for sure.
You can feel it.
Yeah. So if you want to check one out, I would recommend that. I'd say to start.
Cool. So what is it? What's it again?
Then Came Seven.
Then Came Seven. Yeah. And this is the title track.
Oh, right on. Keith, it's been so fun to hang out.
Yeah, it was great hanging out. And thanks to everybody in the chat too. And Gordy, good meeting you too, man.
Yeah,
it was good talking.
Good to meet you, Keith. This was fun.
I was hoping Gordy would come on. So appreciate you here too, brother. And everybody in the chat. This has been an awesome one. I was excited all day for it and watching Keith's videos. And so we're going to play this Then Came Seven. The reason I invited Keith on today is because it's 11/17, and that's 111 and a 7, which if you multiply, that's 777, which is one of the lyrical concepts in this track. So yeah.
Yep. I wanted a hook to be a number, and that's what it was.
And a 7 is a hook if you flip it upside down.
There you go. It's true.
Okay, well, thanks, man. Much love. We'll have to have you back on, maybe with the wig.
Yeah, maybe we'll do. You can hang out with Flaccid a little bit next time. That would be fun.
And I'd like have all the voice changers ready to go.
Sounds good.
Okay, well, we'll hang out in the chat while we play this song. And thanks again, everybody. It's been super real. Hope you go follow Keith on YouTube or Spotify or Amazing Music. I will link the Spotify and YouTube in the chats while the song is going. So much love, everybody. Thanks. And don't forget, hit me up if you want sound healing sessions. Email me or message me on Telegram or divination. Definitely got a little bit of time in the end of this week if anybody wants to fit one in. So yeah, bye-bye, everyone.